Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 97 of ReelBlend, the podcast that brings Quentin Tarantino back to the ReelBlend family. This is something really special that we were working on pretty much from the first time Quentin was on the show. And the story behind it is relatively obscene and insane, and I can't believe that it happened the way that it happened. We will share all of that after the full Quentin Tarantino interview. If you guys want to stick around and listen to four geeks talk about how they landed one of the biggest interviews of their entire career. But I don't want to delay the inevitable. I don't want to delay what everybody is here for. This is the extended director's cut ReelBlend interview with Quentin Tarantino. Guys, we are here with a friend of the show, Quentin Tarantino. I feel like I can say that now. We were able to have Quentin on the show earlier to talk about his film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you said something to us at the end of it, which is very sweet, a very industry thing to do. We should do this again sometime. And you hear that a lot. But the fact that you are here right now, actually doing it again and being our first recurring guest.
Oh, great.
We want to say thank you very much for that. So we're very excited to dive back into your film as going through the process right now, and then several other topics we're going to get to, and Kevin is going to start us off.
By the way, we're drinking Casamigos margaritas again. Can we cheers on the actual audio?
On the audio. There we go.
Nice.
Fred Raston's going to edit that for us.
Tradition now.
No, but honestly, there's been so many scenes in this film that I would love to nerd out with you about, but one in particular is Richardson's reset of the shot around Timothy. My favorite shot in the whole film is when they're doing Lancer, and DiCaprio flubs his lines, but the shot comes around Timothy. Richardson brings us around. And the beauty of this moment is we don't know, we're watching a fully edited scene. Yeah. We actually don't see the production. We don't see the microphones. We don't see the camera person. We don't see the director. But in the sequence, when you reset the shot, we reset it mid-scene. Can you talk about the decision of that and that shot being executed? Because it's one of my favorite shots in the whole film. What was the decision there?
Well, it was. I think the decision was how I was going to use the artifice of shooting Lancer in the film, and I think in the script, like there was another Lancer scene that it's on the Blu-ray, but it's not in the movie. That we see the two brothers meet each other for the first time, Luke Perry's character and Timothy Olyphant's character, and so I think in the script, the way I did it is the first 3/4 of the scene, it's just like what the hell is this Western doing here? All right. So you're just kind of watching this Western scene. And then in the last quarter of it, we kind of hop on the other side of the camera. And so the characters are in the foreground, but then the crew is in the background. And so that was how I thought I was going to do it. And then I actually just thought, No, let's not do it that way. Let's do it as a cut piece completely.
Scored everything. And then when you yell cut, whatever shot that is, or any kind of intrusion that happens from off screen, whatever shot that is, that's the shot where we break the illusion. But up until that moment, it's all like the finished piece.
Because in those moments, mentally, you're like, I'm going to see a camera, or I'm going to see a boom mic or something that takes you out of it.
So the reset indicates to us.
Yes, exactly. And part of my whole thing was, I was trying to get as much Lancer in there as possible because that's like, the closest thing to my third Western, all right? And so the idea that I could sneak it through the back door and kind of get a whole episode of Lancer in there when no one's looking, I'm not going to fuck that up. And I actually really had more of that idea than it was like, then Leo came up with the idea that maybe he should screw up. And
really?
Because it actually wasn't in the script that he screws up. And so he had this idea that he should screw up, and then when he has to do the scene later, now he's coming back from something. Well, okay, so he comes up with that idea. Like, I knew it was a great idea when he said it, but he's fucking up my Lancer scene. Hey, why don't you just concentrate on playing Caleb, all right? But I knew it was a damn good idea. Okay, so then I kind of played the game. Okay, well, we'll do it when you don't fuck up, and then we'll do it when you fuck up, and we'll see what happens. All right.
So you say that just to like to say to him.
Well, no, I knew it was a good idea. All right. So and so okay, well, I'll do it both ways. I want to have my full-on Lancer scene, and I want to explore this good idea. Now, the minute he did the take that you see in the movie, okay, well, this is obviously what we're doing.
Right.
All right, that take was just so fantastic.
That also when the director's saying like, no, keep going. Like,
Yeah. No, he knows he knows that at this point he's going to mess up, and so rather than having a director come flying in on a crane or a director talking from off camera, it's Rick who breaks the take with his line, and then you hear the script girl give him the line, and then even the idea that when he has his tinter tantrum, the camera's not following him. He comes out and he steps out of the shot and like whirls around like a buzzing bee. All right. And then eventually has to sit back down into the frame and deal with it all. So once we had that was really great. And then now we can, and we're still not seeing the crew because they're just still an off-camera. There's still an off-camera perspective. So then I go, well, now what we have to do is now we have to actually we've actually just seen this big move, and then the big move works around Oliphant and lands, and then he steps into his position and then fucks up the line. All right. So now we got to reset. All right. And so then the whole idea of having seen this move that's kind of invisible because you're kind of trapped in the whole moment of the movie. Now we see how, and we actually put a squeak, all right, on the track. So it because it's not meant to go that way. And so it's like, okay, and now go. And so, so that's where all that came from. I was very, very happy, but I really liked that idea of showing the media that Rick is shooting as a finished product until something happens. All right.
And it almost reminds you, that's right, I'm watching a movie about it.
And that shot, all right, is what they're doing at that given time. I mean, one of the things about it is I think that you're watching the film, and I couldn't have been happier about the way this works. Well, believe me, if I could have had more Lancer in there, I would have. But as it is, when you see Johnny ride in the town, I think there is this thing for a lot of audience. What the fuck is this shit? And then you're sitting there and you're watching it. And then even the whole thing when he has the showdown with Business Bob, right? I think that's a really cool scene. But I think people are like, what the fuck is this shit? All right. And then, and then when Leo comes out as Caleb, you kind of have a sense of it. And they, oh shit, well, they're going further with it. All right. So he walks in the saloon and that kind of all starts playing out. Then they have their kind of scene at the bar. Then when they go and they sit down at the table, now you're kind of acclimated to the scene, all right? You're kind of stop asking, what is this shit? You kind of caught up with it now. And one of the things as a director is you can actually kind of notice when the audience is listening, when they're not, when they're slightly checking out.
You can feel that in the script or the
No, in watching it in a theater.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Watching it with an audience. You can feel the audience when they're connected, when they're not, when they're listening. And I all of a sudden started really feeling, once they sat down and he was like, so what are you doing around here? And Johnny Lancer starts telling his story. Like, oh shit, the audience they're listening now. They're now acclimated to the scene. They want to hear what Johnny's answer is. Rick is Caleb now officially. And so it literally is just as they start paying attention to what is being said and the drama of the scene, that's when Rick blows it.
That reset shot. I could watch that on a loop for 3 hours. I would watch that shot reset
on the way back, and then we were in the Uber on the way back.
Richardson's
from,
a genius. Man.
So we had Richardson.
That's my idea.
No, but I mean the way it was executed. But it was Quentin's idea. So Quentin's a genius.
Yes,
we already know you're a genius.
We already know Oscar Richardson III is a genius. My fucking shot.
We had Richardson on the show, and I laid out that whole setup for him as a question, and I also wanted to get his thoughts as to why it went into it. And his reply to me, which you'll probably totally understand and love, he said, what does that scene mean to you?
Oh, what does that scene mean to you?
And then I had to give him a whole long answer that he loved.
At no point did about Richardson go, that was Quentin's idea, not mine.
Something we couldn't talk about before, which we can now, is the ending, and specifically the alternate history version of things. I'm curious, whenever you've done it before with Bastards, how far beyond that moment, because it's a fun sort of what if, how far beyond that moment do you start questioning, well, what would have happened to Hollywood if things had worked out that way? And I'm wondering specifically in the world of Roman Polanski, the ripple effect that moment would have had on all of their lives had that been the case.
Well, it would have, it would have been intense. I mean, I can't even begin to venture how culturally it would have changed. Because I mean, ever since my movie came out, everyone was quoting the Joan Didion line, like crazy. But there was an aspect from everybody I know that there was this Topanga Canyon entertainment class hippie ethos that really did exist, where the doors were open, come on in. I mean, if you're out drinking and having a good time and you want to get together somewhere, you could just go to so-and-so's house off of Beechwood and go into their guest house and continue partying. You don't even need to get their permission. And you just could kind of do that. All right. People could literally exist on, couches and couch surfing and just crash pads and stuff. And all that just went away. So I can't even begin to venture a guess of how like I said, the entertainment class hippie ethos, how that, if that didn't just get blown away by a bad wind, what that would do. But I can venture that, Roman Polanski would probably have done Day of the Dolphin. That's what he was working on at the time. That's why he wasn't even in town. He was in London working on a script stuff for Day of the Dolphin. So I think, so that would have happened, and it would really be interesting to see where Sharon went with her career. Now, Warren Beatty told me that Sharon was legitimately considered for Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah,
Really?
Kidding.
yeah. He told me that. He said that it was like, no, she was a genuine. She was one of the three people that we absolutely considered.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That would have been amazing.
And so the thing is, like, she played fairly either flivorous. Is that the word? Yeah, your word.
Right.
All right.
Is that right? I think that's the word.
Roles. Or even when they weren't, the movie was frivolous. All right. Valley of the Dolls. But the people around her who were part of her circle, all right, really liked, really had a lot of faith in her. Like I said, Warren Beatty was part of the circle. He considered her for Bonnie, and Roman would have cast her as Rosemary.
Oh, wow.
If he could have. All right. He said, he said that. I can't imagine anybody but Mia Farrow playing the role. All right, but he said that he actually would have loved to have cast Sharon as Rosemary. But he kept waiting for the Paramount producers to bring it up. And when they didn't bring it up, he thought it would be unprofessional of him to bring it up. But if they had of, he would have gone right down that road.
Wow.
You bring up characters that could be viewed as frivolous. There are none in this film. Like everybody who has even a scene, it's important to them. And one that people have really attached to is Julia Butters.
Yes, and for rightfully so.
For so many great reasons. It's almost like it's a little oasis for Rick, in the middle of this storm. But there's the line that she gives that you used to end one of your trailers.
Yeah.
That was the best acting I've ever seen, in my entire life. She leans over and whispers it to him. If you were able to lean over and whisper that to one of your actors at any given point on a set from a film that you've done before, there were just in that moment where they so captured you, you said, that's the best acting I have ever seen in my entire life. Who would you say that to?
Well, gosh, look, I wouldn't be able to break it down between, this one would be number 2 and this one would be number 1
Sure.
and that one would be number 3. You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with the first thing that came to my mind when you told that story. So that's not saying this is the best, but it's the first one that came to my mind.
Sure.
When I had I kind of had a moment like that. And even to qualify that just a little bit, because it's like I'm probably always going to feel that way when I've written a really good piece of dialogue or a really good monologue or something, and then somebody comes and delivers it to a fairly well. So I'm probably always feeling that when Sam Jackson does one of my monologues in the right way, or Christoph Waltz does one of my monologues in the right way. But the moment that I had that kind of feeling was during a take on Django Unchained, and it was with Leo, and it was during a take on Django Unchained at the dinner table scene. And it wasn't. No, it wasn't the glass. All right, even though that was impressive in its own right. He was talking about his father. I think it was the speech where he talks about his father and the slave that used to shave him all the time. And I don't
slit his throat.
Yeah,
the skull.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I had a very weird relationship with the character he played, Calvin Candie, because all my villains, every single villain that I've ever created, I always kind of had sympathy for them. I always liked them to some degree or another. And even Hans Landa, I could see his point of view, and I liked the guy. All right, he was bad, but I got it.
Christoph makes him likable.
And he does make him likable.
Comical, weirdly enough. Yeah.
And it's even that whole kind of thing in the stories where it's like, you don't want Landa to triumph at the end, but you kind of want Landa to figure out what the bastards are doing, because if he won, that'll build up to how impressive that I've made the character, but also it'll be a much more exciting movie if he figures out what's going on and how the fuck are they going to get out of this?
Right.
All right, we are watching a movie. But Calvin Candie was different from the rest of them. I kind of detested the character. I really, really hated him. And it was weird to write a character that I hated and kind of feel that way about the character. And so anyway, Leo was, and because of that, I actually thought he was a substandard character. When Leo was really into it, I thought I was kind of buffaloing him a little bit. I thought, this character is not as good as he thinks it is.
Imagine that.
I'm not going to set him straight. All right? But I'm thinking he ain't all that.
But to you, it was Django's movie. It was
What?
to you, it was Django's movie.
Well, it was just the fact that to me, he was without ambiguity, and so that made him a lesser character.
Gotcha.
But we did a really good job of filling in everything, and Leo brought ambiguity to the piece. And where I had that moment, and I actually said it out loud in front of the whole crew, where it was like it was one of the many takes that Leo did, talking about his father, talking about growing up at the plantation, and all of a sudden, I saw Calvin in a different way than I ever had before. Leo was able to bring me inside of his world and to see him as a person in a way that I had never really looked at him before. I'd just been able to see the gargoyle. And then when the take was over, and I said in front of the whole crew, I go, Leo, man, that was fucking amazing. You've made me understand Calvin in a way that I have never understood him before. And you made me ask a question. Can you blame a Borgia for being a Borgia? Now, actually, yeah, you can blame a Borgia for being a Borgia, but now you can understand a Borgia a little bit more. And it's not so easy to throw off everything you've ever known and everything you've ever been taught. All right? People do it, and people did it even back then. All right, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. And frankly, did this kid ever have a chance?
That's amazing.
And that was not a perspective that I had going into the project.
Did you go up to Leo and tell him that you
I
thought
told it
it
in front of the whole crew.
That's amazing.
So when you did it on Hollywood and Julia says it to DiCaprio, did DiCaprio remember that moment from Django?
I don't think so. I think he liked that moment and everything, but it wasn't a tearful moment. He was just happy that I was so happy and that I applauded him in front of the entire crew.
He didn't say Leonardo to fucking DiCaprio.
I think he said that to himself a couple of times.
Where would you put the F word? So it's Rick fucking Dalton. Would it be Leo fucking DiCaprio?
fucking Caprio.
The fucking Caprio.
Absolutely.
I'm available for hire.
I always appreciated your films. As I grew up with them, I had Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs posters in my room. I think my favorite line ever is Mr. White, you shoot me in a dream, you better wake up and apologize, which is a Muhammad Ali reference.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Which is, I always found that you have been a big proponent of the cinematic experience, the theater experience. And with Hateful Eight, bringing back these 70 millimeter projectors, I went and saw Hateful Eight in the Roadshow. It was one of the greatest experiences I ever had in a movie theater. I saw this twice in 35, once in 70. There's something about film that I don't know that I could ever explain in words why it feels so magical, but it does. Yeah. We had Roger Deakins in the show recently. who's been actively shooting very digitally for a long time
Great
now.
name drop. Can we pause on your name drop just for a second? Just for a second.
It is a name drop. We had him on, and we're talking about digital versus film. Sicario, Skyfall, even now 1917, Mendez's film, all shot digitally. When I spoke to you at Django, we talked about the idea of digital versus film, and you said something along the lines of, like, if you shoot digitally, you go to the theater, it's like watching TV at home. Something along those lines, not to take you out of context. Where do you feel the technology has gotten to a point now where you can make it look like film? And when you talk to someone like a Roger Deakins, who is very adamant about digital being able to look like film if done correctly, what are your thoughts on that? Because for me, I'm a film guy. I know you're a film guy. Yeah. Richardson shoots on film, obviously. So what are your thoughts on someone like a Deakins, who is one of the greatest cinematographers ever, saying that digital can achieve that look? And do you think we've gotten to a point where we can?
He doesn't want to spend the time lighting. It's that fucking simple.
Is that really it?
Yeah, of course it is. That's it. That's what it is. He doesn't want to spend the time lighting. All right. What you see is what you get. All right. He looks at the monitor. There's no 5 processes that he's going to have to go to. All right. He's not going to work through a degrading process that what's actually playing at the theaters. That he has to know that, I got to get this. So 4 steps down the line, when they see it in at a movie theater, it's going to look like that. All right. He looks at it in the monitor on the day. That's it. What you see is what you get. All right. And then, of course he can shoot night scenes in
Sicario.
In Sicario or World War I. All right. And he doesn't have 4 trucks. All right, full of lighting equipment, just trying to get an image. Yeah, it's just it's easier for him. It's easier for him. He can and he does, he doesn't have to do that much on the day. All right. There's a lot of stuff he can do later that will take care of a lot of things.
The work is after, not during.
Yeah. I mean, I like cinematography where it's, no, what you see is what you get is what you do on the day. Now you can do a bleach print, and there's all kinds of little things you can do. But if it's not captured, if it's not captured on the day, then you didn't capture it. You didn't do it. Now, there is a whole lot of even shooting on film where people window all kinds of stuff. Like they do an interpositive, and then they can window everything. And to that degree, it's like, before you could watch a movie and think, hey, that movie has really good cinematography. Well, you have no idea if it actually has a good cinematographer or not now. I mean, The Star, all right, could have just been windowing the entire process, and they just got an image, so they weren't fucking around on the day of shooting. And then planning on doing all these windows when it came, okay, well, let's bring the sky out a little bit more here. Let's bring the background out. Give me a little bit more black over there. That's, it's all a paint box set. And that's even when it's done on film.
Right.
All right. When it's on digital, forget about it. You can do literally anything you want. But I guess where I'm coming from is in a world where you can do anything, nothing means anything.
That's a great,
So what do you ultimately feel about digital and film in the sense of, I know you still probably feel the same way, and I do as well, but do you think we're getting to a point where digital can ever achieve that look officially? Like, can you look at Sicario?
Well, here's my point of what you were talking about. And I don't think I'm throwing Deakins under the bus.
No,
I think I would let him say I'm wrong about why he's coming from where he's coming from. I think it is that case. But the key to the way you pose the question is, we can make digital look like film. We can do it. We can have a thing that looks like film. Well, film looks like film.
Right, exactly.
All right, if you were going to create something that could not be done on film, and I'm not talking about just the hard work of it being done on film, but if there was this other format, all right, that created a look that just film is incapable of doing, well, that would be something.
Yeah.
That would be something. That would be legit as far as I'm concerned. But, trying to add, take a digital, trying to take digital and then add a shutter effect or grain or speckling or anything like that. what the fuck are you doing, man? All right, just shoot on film.
Do it.
Shoot on
This,
film.
this tofu tastes just like steak.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
I'll take a steak.
It's a veggie burger. Yeah, all right. I've had good veggie burgers.
You know, one of the things I love most about this movie, and there are a lot of things, trust me, is that as a 31-year-old guy, you let me feel like what Hollywood felt like in 1969. Like for 2.5 hours, I felt like that's what I missed. Sucks that I missed it, but I got to experience that for 2.5 hours. If there's a kid out there right now who's going to be a future filmmaker, and in 50 years he wants to make a movie about what Hollywood was like, in 2019, what are some aspects of this business today that really are going to stand out and that he's going to focus on when he tells the story of Hollywood in 50 years?
Well, gosh, that'll be interesting. You know, I think it's a situation where it's like, you know, we have to be aware enough to know that we really don't know what they're going to be talking about 40 years or 50 years, because we're in the middle of it. I don't think if you talk to any 10 luminary filmmakers from 1969, they would have the take that I had on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because they would just be too into it. I mean, whether it's, now giving you this is a little off topic, but only vaguely. You know, I think one of the closest things that we could have actually seen possibly is apparently Sam Peckinpah really wanted to do the movie adaptation of Joan Didion's Play It As It Lays.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And like the studio was like, I fucking forget.
Wait, was
it.
this before or after Wild Bunch?
It was after Wild Bunch. You know, I think the book came out like within the next year or something like that. And so I think they made the movie version with Frank Perry like somewhere around 73 or 72. And but Peckinpah wanted it, and they go, don't be ridiculous. And so like, you know, they didn't even consider him for it. But there's an aspect to my movie that it's a little bit, this is the closest we're ever going to get to the Peckinpah Play It As It Lays. But I mean, I would part of the reason we don't know is we don't know how things are going to play out. I mean, one of the things, but the only thing that I do know is I don't know what things are going to be like 7 years from now.
Okay.
I don't, and nobody at this table does. I don't think anybody in the industry does.
Could you have said that in the 90s if I'd asked you this
Yeah,
question?
of course. I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have said that in the 90s. And I would have been a little wrong, but I mean, it could really, really, really be different. Like, we didn't see the record album going away as an art form. We didn't see literary heroes going the way of the dodo bird. All right, you know,
Streaming.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't see. Yeah, we didn't see a lot of these things happen until they happened.
Yeah,
until they were literally in the rearview mirror. And so you know, we're struggling. We're fighting. We're contemplating what movies are going to be now. But I think in 7 years we'll know. But what I know is we don't know now.
Right.
I'm going to follow up in 7 years.
I love the fact we always sort of take a step back and look at the big macro picture of the year in film, essentially. And
It's been one of the best years of film I've seen in a long time.
it's been really
I
impressive.
love this year. Yeah.
Personally, I'm thrilled that you let this movie come out in July.
Yeah, me too.
Because right now there's such a glut of really good films that are hitting at the same time. And so in a given week, we might have to process, you know, Richard Jewell, 1917, Little Women, all these films that are...
Which we did recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost unfair to the films. And so I know you went through that with Hateful Eight, where you entered it into a really crowded marketplace. Yeah. And we're also going for theatrical, you know, experience as part of that and fought with that. So I'm just curious how much that factored into your decision to let this breathe in July, even though people who might think that like, oh, we want awards chances, that always wants to go out later in the year, you know, but you were like, fuck it, I'm going to go in July.
Well, I think that's, I've done that like twice before in this decade, all right, in the case of Django and in the case of The Hateful Eight, where in both movies, we opened them up on Christmas. And Django was very well rewarded for that, both box office wise, and then we did, and we got, and you know, I won a screenplay Oscar for it, and
Right.
Christoph Waltz won Best Supporting Actor Oscar for it. That ended up being really, really good strategy for us.
Mhm.
But it was a drag that, it's just poured into the marketplace at the last second. The conversation's already has long since begun.
Right.
And Hateful Eight, even though Ennio won the Oscar for Hateful Eight, I was a little disappointed by what happened with us there. All right, but at the same time, I kind of understood it. Now the situation though is looking back on both Pulp and Inglourious Bastards, there was a big benefit from the film. Rather than just this rush, everything's got to come out in the last month. There was a big benefit about the fact that the films had played and had done well. They were actually known as successes, and that people saw it not in a mad rush. A lot of people saw it at the theaters when it came out, and maybe they've even seen it a couple times, twice or three times maybe. And in the case of those two, and so they weren't just waiting for the screener.
Right.
Most of them had a theatrical experience, and not a crushed one, not a pressured one. And and not only that, the film had come out early enough that it's like they have memories of it. Their neighbors saw it. Their dentist saw it.
Right.
Their daughter saw it. Their daughter's boyfriend saw it. And so there was they literally had conversations. The movie was alive and living. And so I don't think the way it's existed, I guess from the first decade of the 21st century, where all the movies that are real Oscar contenders are backlogged till the last 2 months of the process. I don't think that's the way it is anymore. They're always going to be the ones that are coming in there, but I don't think that's the best strategy nowadays. I actually think the best strategy is opening your movie soon enough so it's not part of that crunch. Find yourself. Don't let the tail wag the dog as far as your Oscar chances are concerned. Pick the best date for your movie. Let it do good on its own. Let people come and go see it. And then let it take on. Look, maybe I wouldn't, if I was going for Oscars, maybe I wouldn't open a movie in February or wouldn't open it in March, but you should be able to do that.
I'm curious, how come you have never participated in the Toronto Telluride? Or have you?
Well, I did with Pulp Fiction. I did with both with Pulp Fiction and with Reservoir Dogs. I won the whole film festival circuit.
Okay.
With that, the way it worked out for all the other ones, it just I just kind of didn't need to.
Okay.
We opened in Cannes, or we just were literally making it in time to make a release date.
Okay.
I mean, literally, that was our date, was our release date, and we had to kill ourselves to get it done in time.
Gotcha. Because those are other scenarios where it's
And
you're
Jake,
seeing so many movies in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Jake does have a follow-up to the Oscar question, but since you mentioned the release, it got me thinking about something. The Blu-ray is coming out almost at a perfect time.
Yeah, right.
Is that designed to come out in December to bring it back to people's memories? Not that it left, but does that part of the design help?
It's the right kind of synergy.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right, and it's also one of those. I mean, we still have theatrical engagements going on. That's once upon a time in Hollywood. At the easy enough at the New Beverly. I own the damn place. But the thing is, we're not showing to an audience of 30 people when we show on the weekends, and it fucking does great.
That's great.
Really, to this months later. But then the Blu-ray coming out, it's the right time, but it's also but again, I think it just suggests that we open the movie at the right time. So now this is the right time for the Blu-ray, and then the synergy is fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So it's not just a knock it out a screener that we send to the Academy members. You can get the real damn thing. All right. And
because we got the DVD screener, and I went, I can't do this.
Shout out to Shannon McIntosh, who's
Yeah.
in this room. McIntosh, we're talking about this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Blu-ray. It's one of the coolest things, and Shannon's very involved in making these shows. An amazing job. And you want to mention the Mad thing real quick?
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yeah, well-
Yeah.
Well, one of the things is one of the things on the Blu-ray is
we're holding right now.
I'm touching right now. I'm fondling right now. Is an issue of Mad Magazine that has a takeoff on the show Bounty Law called Lousy Law. All right? But it's our second takeoff on it because what happened was, so I had it that, so when you saw Rick's house, like a lot of the old stars of the day, of that day, you go to their house. It's always a line that cracked me up. It was Robert Mitchum talking about going to Kirk Douglas's house. He goes, "Have you been to Kirk Douglas' house before? You're in a fucking Kirk Douglas museum."
I can see him saying that. I really can see him saying that.
So I figured Rick's house would be like a Rick Dalton museum. So it would be like the one sheets for his movies, and then and highlights from his career, where it's like, you know, he was on the Bounty Law was on the cover of a TV Guide twice. You know, once him, once a Jack Davis style caricature. So both of those TV guides are on the wall, and like his LA Times Sunday calendar TV guide cover is on the wall. And then I had that Mad Magazine did a takeoff on Bounty Law.
Right.
And so we got in touch with Tom Richmond, who's like one of the really great illustrators at Mad Magazine. And he does the Jack Davis style. So that's kind of the thing I wanted. I wanted to be as if Jack Davis drew it. And so we asked Mad, can we do a Mad Magazine cover and put it as a prop in the movie? And they go, yeah, sure. And so we get Tom, and I designed the cover. Not this one. This is a different. This is a new one. The one in the movie. The one in the movie. So I designed the cover. Okay, this is what I want. And you know, Alfred E. Newman is on the wanted poster, and he's picking his nose right up to the knuckle. All right, and Rick is, and J.K. Hill's looking, going, nah. and I even came up with the idea that and the parody title instead of Bounty Law would be Lousy Law. So Tom does it, and it's terrific, and we have it, and I even have the original artwork. Thankfully, and then and we put the cover on the wall. So anyway, it looks so fucking cool that we go to Mad Magazine and they go, look, this looks really great, and look at it with your logo and everything. Why don't we do this for the real Mad Magazine? Now, like, I got a big surprise ending, so I can't like let you guys do Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I could bring your guys over and we shot a lot more for the Bounty Law episode than we ever show in the movie. We could show you everything we did, and then maybe you could do a takeoff on Bounty Law. And then one, it would be fun because, okay, you're making fun of Bounty Law a little bit. That would be great. But also you get a chance to just parody 50s television Westerns in general. Well, they ended up loving the idea. So they sent a couple guys over to the editing room. We showed them everything we had. And then they went off and then they wrote a whole Lousy Law parody with Rick. And then they took that cover and they put it on their magazine. That was the cover of their magazine. That ended up being the last original issue of Mad Magazine.
Oh my
And that's
that's the one in the movie.
It's the one we created. the one that was released with the whole, you know.
The one in the movie is the last one ever.
Yeah. Was the last one. I mean, I think they're still figuring out what they're going to do. I think, but I think it's going to be a lot of reprints from here on in.
Right.
All right. And so the last official where everything was original was that issue. So to sum up, I
Not Robert Richardson.
designed the cover
Richardson just
of
texted
the
me.
last issue of Mad Magazine ever.
I feel like you've been waiting to say that.
Take that, Judd Apatow. You wish you could have written for Mad Magazine. Fuck you, motherfucker. Do what I did.
All I'm hearing in my head now is Lousy Law, starring Flake Cahill.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all.
That's what it is.
That's what I'm hearing.
Flake Cahill.
Flake Cahill.
Take the Palme d'Or, take the Oscars. It doesn't matter.
Flake Cahill.
Mad Magazine.
The Oscars to hold up the Mad Magazine.
That's
And so in
amazing.
the-
No,
That's amazing.
Judd Apatow is getting hemorrhoids right now just hearing that story because he could never hope to top it.
And on the Blu-ray, you're going to get another version of the Mad magazine.
A new issue of Lousy Love.
Very cool.
Circling back to the Oscar buzz we were talking about. If you can't tell, you were sitting at a table full of people who champion you and champion your work. So much so that your victories are our victories and your losses are our losses.
Thank you.
And the reason I say that is because we all believe that you're one of the greatest directors that's ever existed in the history of film. So it bugs me to no end that you have yet to win a Best Director or Best Picture Oscar. If you are sticking to this 10 film stretch, which you say, that means you've got 2 shots left.
Yeah, right on.
How bad, like, do you want it bad, or is it something you just don't really, like, you got 2 for writing so it doesn't bother you as much?
Well, it doesn't bother me. My career has been so amazing that
You've done okay.
Yeah.
You've done okay.
My career and my life has been so amazing that to be bothered by not having a trophy or something would be, yeah.
It probably bothers me more than it bothers you.
Well, it'd be nice. It would definitely be nice. And we'll see what happens. All right. I think I got a good shot at it though this year.
Do you feel this year is different going into it?
Yeah, I do actually. I do.
What is that different feeling?
Well, that's a good question. I was actually just contemplating it when I said that. All right, it's like I wasn't bummed about not winning for Pulp Fiction because there was part of like I won the screenplay, but one. That was kind of the role back then. It was like the cool hit movie won Best Screenplay. And then the more Oscar movie that you thought was going to win the Oscar was the one that got director and got Best Picture.
Can I pause you for one second?
Yeah,
That is the reason I hate Forrest Gump as much as I do.
He actively
I
hates
legitimately
that movie.
hate that movie. And watching that movie triumph that year over, to me, 4 legitimately much better films.
Shawshank was that year too.
Exactly.
Quiz Show is that year. 4 Weddings and a Funeral is that year. And of course.
That's why doesn't Matt Damon say that the Oscars should be held 10 years after the movie comes out? That way you can gauge the impact that film had because Pulp Fiction clearly stood the test of time.
But that's part of the reason why. I'm sorry. Continue.
I get it. I get it. I mean, but look, there is also another reality where it was, it probably wouldn't have been the best thing for me to win Best Director and Best Picture with my second movie at that young of age. Yeah. I won Best Screenplay, and I was very happy. But I mean, it wasn't difficult, but it was a thing to even overcome Pulp Fiction and move on with the career as it was. If it even had that attached to it. I mean, I don't think I would be feeling that now. All right, now Pulp Fiction would just be among the Best Picture winners, and that would be what it is. But, but for the 6 years that happened after that, I think it was probably good that I didn't have that kind of albatross, around my neck. That something to even just make Pulp Fiction even a harder thing to get past. In the case of Inglourious Bastards, it was we had a shot, but we all knew Catherine was going to win for The Hurt Locker. Yeah. So it just kind of was the way it was. Now, in that instance, I was totally pissed that I won that I lost original screenplay to Mark Bull. All right. Now, I like Mark, and we were doing a lot of shit talking with each other through the entire process. I just think my script was better. All right,
it was
the opening scene alone.
Yeah. That's what I thought. All right, so that's where I felt I got robbed. All right, and then when it came back around for Django. And he was nominated again for Zero Dark 30. All right, I bump into him in the lobby of the Kodak, and I go, "Motherfucker, you're not even getting out of your seat this time." If you get out of your seat, you better be taking a piss. Because you ain't getting out. I am not competing against anybody else here except you. I'm going to shut your fucking candy store down tonight.
How is that not your speech?
That's amazing.
Not only that, fucking Mark Bowl, all right? Even
Poor Mark Bowl.
in Inglourious Bastards, even did this whole fucking thing, all right? Well, because we go to a zillion award shows before the Academy. Yeah, so it's like, so at least 6 different things. So, I mean, we get along. He's a great guy, all right? So, and Catherine's really cool. So we'd end up at the parties of these things, and we'd be like having cocktails together and drinking and talking about stuff. And so then Mark goes, okay, man, it's between you and me. So I think we make a deal, man. I think we make a pact. All right? So whoever wins, when you go up there, you talk about the other one. When you win, you go up there, and then I give it to you. And then when you win, you go up there and you give it to me because it's about us. All right? And I think that's how it's got to be, man. I go, okay. He didn't say jack fucking shit when he won. I was like, what the fuck about
He thought you were going to win.
7 different parties.
Yeah.
7 different parties. That's what you said we should do. It was your fucking idea. Yeah, I know,
And you would have done it for him.
I would have done it for him. I know I'm a man of my word. All right,
Which is why you're sitting right here right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not really mad at that. I think he actually just got. You can say that you want to say a ton of shit when you actually win an Oscar and you get up there, everything goes out of your head. So
What is that moment like?
I think
we will. I'm never going to experience it. What is that? What is that moment like when they call your name?
Well, it's one of those weird things where it's like, look, you want to win. But at the moment, just before they call your name, you kind of don't want to win because you don't want to have to go up there. I mean, I'm only talking about that 10 seconds. Yeah. All right. Just before they call your name, you kind of like, that means I got to go up there.
Who presented yours? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. It was for Pulp Fiction. It was Anthony Hopkins.
Wow.
And for Django Unchained, it was Dustin Hoffman and Charlize Theron.
Oh my God.
You mentioned Hopkins.
bad.
And going off Jake's question now I kind of curious. Once they go to commercial break after the win happens, when you walked back with Hopkins after Pulp Fiction, do you remember what you guys talked about?
I don't remember saying anything with. No, I think me and Roger were doing all the talking. All right, because we both won it together, so we were very happy. But in the case of Charlize and Dustin, it was great because Charlize is my neighbor. All right, so she was like,
you talked about in the
yeah,
speech,
I think I mentioned it. All right, and she was like, "Oh, Quentin, I'm so happy for you." And it was also Dustin Hoffman was the one that reminded me. He goes, "No, take the envelope." Take the envelope, all right? I would have left the envelope there, all right? But he goes, no, Quentin, take the envelope. And I still have the envelope. I don't have the envelope from Pulp Fiction, but I have the envelope for...
who has the Pulp Fiction?
I'm just the janitor of the fucking Dorothy Chandler
Robert
Rebellion, I
Zemeckis
guess.
stole it.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. Now I have an idea for your 10th movie. You should do it because since you do the idea of rewriting like the ending with Sharon Tate and obviously the rewriting of the ending of Hitler and Bastards, you should rewrite the ending of the Oscars of '94. Literally, like you rewrite. He goes back, Pulp wins, and we cut to Zemeckis. Yeah. He's like,
Single tear rolling down Tom Hanks's cheek.
You needed it.
Well, I will tell you what I would rewrite, all right, if I could for '94. And I think it would have made the Oscar ceremony, it would have made the whole campaign really more exciting. I wasn't involved with this. I didn't even know that I should have been involved with this, and I should have been. It was ridiculous that Pulp Fiction was put in the drama section of the Golden Globes. It obviously should have been put in the comedy. As a matter of fact, I thought it was. It wasn't until a couple of days before the actual ceremony that I realized we were in the drama section.
wow.
It's like, we're a comedy. Now, the only reason it wasn't, it was because everyone was talking about how violent it was. But what made it special was that it was as violent as it was, and it was really funny.
Hence the Marvin getting shot.
Shot Marvin in the face.
It's a comedy. Every video store in America put it in the comedy section when it came out. And the fact that we were in the drama. So the thing about it is I was shocked about that. But if we had been in comedy, then Forrest Gump would have won Best Drama. We would have won Best Comedy. And it would have been Catch as Catch Can for the entire season
Is that
after
why
that.
Hollywood's in comedy?
Well, no, it deserves to be in comedy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it straddles both lines, though. There is drama.
Well, there absolutely is drama there. But, the Golden Globes have tried to get me to put my movies in comedy every single year. I mean, maybe not Hateful Eight, all right? But all the other ones, they try to get me to put it in comedy. Go, Quentin, I'm telling you, it is the funniest movie of the year. If you put it in comedy, you will win. And I was like, it's like most of them are foreign. I go, guys, I can't put Django Unchained in comedy, all right? Yes, I
Good
agree.
call.
It is very funny.
Yeah.
But Americans won't think that shit's funny.
Good call.
So true.
I'm going to sidebar for one thing because I just thought about it when I brought up the Marvin shooting sequence in Pulp Fiction. When I sat down with Samuel L. Jackson recently for Spider-Man Far From Home, I was asking him about that sequence, and he told me a story that he feels that John Travolta actually shoots Marvin on purpose because he's mad that Marvin didn't alert him about the guy in the bathroom. And in the movie, it could come across as an accident. But Sam Jackson believes it was actually done on purpose, that Vincent does it on purpose. Where do you fall on that as the writer of that scene? Like, are we supposed to think it's an accident, or do you want us to think it's on purpose and thinking about the Marvin situation?
Well, look, in my whole movies, like, if I want you to know, I tell you.
Right.
And if I leave it open, I'm leaving it open for you. So I could tell you what I think, but if I tell you what I think, that is the way it is. And I've got no problem with Sam's version of it, and I have no problem with anybody else who has that version of it. But I don't want to tell you what to think. I like the fact that both. I love it. I love any scenario where both ways almost equally work.
See, that's the thing. I don't want you to tell me it was on purpose because I like it better in my head
too.
that it was an accident, that it really was a legit. Like, I feel like
yeah.
it changes the whole, not in a worse way, but it would change it for me.
And frankly, that is more where I'm leaning. But at the same time, I don't want to shut the door
Right.
on anyone who's invested in the other thing because the other thing works.
Yeah.
You must love how much fun people are having with Brad Pitt's backstory
Oh, I love that.
and his wife, right? I know I jumped.
Don't you know? I'm
Can we
not
do
going to
it?
ask you to tell us, but do you actually know in your mind what happens in that story?
Oh, yeah,
Or
yeah.
Do
yeah,
you?
yeah, so does Brad, too.
I
No,
know.
actually, one of the ways that I ended up getting Brad in the film, all right, was I wrote a whole book chapter about him on the boat with his wife, all right, and gave it to him, all right? What? Yeah. It's called Misadventure. Yeah, and so he knows the whole thing.
Okay.
All right, and that was like one of the things that pushed him over to actually wanting to do the film.
Did you ever show more of it? Did you ever show?
No. We didn't really show more of it. All right. We kept it the way it is. But to me, what I like about it, especially at like how it exists in the movie, is okay. So it's one of two things. It's either this guy is in this situation. He has a horrible moment of weakness and pulls that trigger. And he gets away with it. He gets away with it. But on one hand, he's not spending the rest of his life in jail. But on another hand, he doesn't get away with it. And it's this heavy thing constantly hanging over him. It's affected his ability to get work. It's affected the way that people look about him, the way people think about him and talk about him. And it probably affects him in a huge way. And then he has this moment of, conceivably redemption at the end of the movie. All right, that ends up happening. So that's one movie. That's a movie. That's a really good movie. That's a good, strong movie. So that's that movie. There's another movie. And this other movie is he didn't do it.
That's what I want to
was
believe.
literally an accident. It's an accident that happened. And it might be even more tragic than just an accident. He might have been thinking about it. And then the gun went off by accident. So he doesn't even know, did a little finger, was there a finger pull in there because I was thinking about it? And so he can still torture himself about that. But he didn't do it. It was an accident. Now he gets away with it. He doesn't go to jail for the rest of his life, but nobody believes it's an accident. Right. And he's tarnished by this crime that he actually didn't commit. And he's defined by this crime that he didn't commit for, the next 20 years. And then that guy gets a chance at redemption. Those are two totally different movies. Completely different movies, different characters, but they're both valid.
Right. Is it also a Natalie Wood thing at all?
It has nothing to do with Natalie Wood.
Really? That's what I was going to ask. That's what I want. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Natalie Wood.
The coincidence that her name is Natalie.
Yeah, and that was literally, and look, I had no problem with it, but that was Rebecca Gay Harden, who played the character. All right, she just came up with that. She just came up with My Sister Named Natalie as an improv. She just threw that in. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay. Cool.
Rebecca Gay Hart. Excuse me.
Do you consider that similar to how you feel about the briefcase and the Band-Aid? Are those similar things?
They all come from the same place.
Okay, come from the same place.
Now, this is a little different though, because the briefcase, I want you to kind of put it together yourself, and whatever you come up with is what you come up with. Here are two very specific scenarios, all right, that are brought up by the whole wife situation. And, that's why I can describe them in this dramatic kind of way, but they're both very different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to transition to something that I think is interesting. We talked to a lot of filmmakers, and Sean's the only father of our podcast. We do not have children. I know you're about to be a father.
Yes.
Which congratulations
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you
We're so
very
happy
much.
for you. Do you envision at all the idea of how fatherhood will change you as a filmmaker? I know you can't look at it now because it hasn't really particularly happened yet, but do you wonder how you will change as a director and how as a storyteller? And do you think it could create more creativity on your part in regards to keep going and keep making more movies? Have you thought about how fatherhood's going to change you as a director?
No, I guess I haven't, because I guess when not having lived it, I guess when I look at it, I see limitations. I don't see, oh my God, this door is going to open up and this new level of creativity is going to come pouring out. I see that my whole thing about directing is going off and climbing Mount Everest or whatever mountain I'm climbing, Fuji or Kilimanjaro or whatever the deal is. I keep coming up with mountain climbing analogies for what I'm trying to do. And the idea that, now I have a child and I want to be around when the child's going to school and go to their little stupid plays and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I'm not as free to go and climb Mount Kilimanjaro, all right, and take the whole family and put them in Africa, for 9 months or for 6 months. Now, actually, my wife would be down with that, all right. But there is an aspect. I remember talking to Warren Beatty when he had his kids and how happy he was, and it was like, no, the days of me making Reds are over.
Wow.
But then, like, not everybody. No one's done it the way Coppola did it with Apocalypse Now, and he took the whole family to the Philippines and bet their whole their house and everything on it, and that's just the way it was. Right. And actually, the fact that he did it with his family was actually part of the the grandiosity of the whole thing, and they backed him 100% on it. And that was exciting. So one does not mean necessarily the loss of the other. But I guess, so I haven't, look, I'm aware enough to know what I don't know. And so I don't know how it's going to change me. And I frankly can't wait to find out.
Well, do you have a movie that you're waiting to be able to show your kid, like for the first viewing of, I can't wait till I can show you this? Mine was McTiernan's first Die Hard.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Cool.
Yes, because that's just one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, to me, because I've actually watched this happen amongst fathers and sons and everything. And I've watched this happen between fathers and sons, and I've watched actually parents and their daughters have different movies too. So it's actually kind of interesting. I can't say what child's going to be. However, on the day that I do have a son, I know that the father-son movie I'm really looking forward to have with them is The Good and the Bad and the Ugly.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow.
I have actually, it's like, that was a very special movie when I saw it with my mom and my stepdad. And it was, and I've actually, it was funny because even like when the kids have been older, I've actually, because I have a really gorgeous print of the film on 35 millimeter. And I've actually had like a couple of different fathers go, you know what? My son's never seen that movie. I would love to watch that movie with my son. I go, well, come over to my house.
Quentin, my son's never seen it.
I will have a child right now.
I'm going to go home and have a kid with my wife, and then I'll call you.
I will find a wife to have a child with.
He has never seen it.
Well, okay, but let me follow up on that with a really cool story. One of the best reviews I've ever heard for Good and the Bad and the Ugly was, it's one of the movies I show pretty much like with every movie. We have movie nights and we show different films. And the two constants that we usually show is we show a Sorcerer, William Friedkin Sorcerer.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we showed The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. And I've actually seen like the crew members bring their sons over to see it.
Projectionist in your house who runs it?
Well, I do have a projectionist. He can run in a house, but like when we do a movie, we're doing a set. Shannon usually develops a screening room for us to show movies at. Even if like literally building the projection booth and everything, like we did in Colorado. All right, for Hateful Eight.
LA.
Yeah, the Sergio Corbucci Cinema Theater is what we called it. All right, So all of a sudden, like Mark Yolano, the sound man, his son saw Good and the Bad and the Ugly and was just gaga for it. All right. We're doing Inglourious Basterds in Germany, and we're having these screenings. And Brad Pitt takes his son Maddox to see Good and the Bad and the Ugly. And Maddox is 9 at the time. So he walks in with Maddox, and they sit in the back, and they sit there and watch the movie, and Maddox really loved it, and he was really proud of him. All right, he goes, "Oh wow, it's a 9-year-old kid, and you have 3 hours, fucking was right there." All right, and he really got a kick out of the movie. So then they come home, and the mom Angie is waiting for them, and so so they come walking through the door, and Angie goes, "So Maddox, did you like the movie?" "Yeah, Mom, it was really great. It was terrific. I loved it." "Wow, that's fantastic. Well, what was the movie about?" "Well, it's about this good guy, and it's about this bad guy, and it's about this ugly guy."
That's what Sergio Leone's pitch was in the studio.
Yeah. And she goes, "Well, which did you like the best?" And Maddox thinks about it and goes, "I like the ugly guy." That's a great review for the movie.
That's
One more
awesome.
follow-up on fatherhood. Have you thought about how you're going to introduce your own filmography in chronological order, just naturally, or are you going to introduce it at all? Maybe.
Good question.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, I'm definitely going to introduce it. I mean, they're going to have to deal with it one way or the other.
Start my best friend's birthday.
Yeah.
Whatever exists from that, which still has True Romance dialogue in it, by the way.
Absolutely has True Romance dialogue in it. I will. But I don't know. I'm going to play that. I'm going to play that by ear. I think whatever I'll introduce to them will probably be. It's going to probably be a lot younger than most people would imagine. All right, but it's going to be whatever I think would float their boat the most at 7 or 8.
All right, we're going to get to Mr. Al Pacino, the legend, who is having an incredible year.
Hell yeah.
We're all blown away by his performance in The Irishman, his performance as Hoffa, and it reminds us that he got to start with you. Yeah. Talk to me just about casting Pacino, directing Pacino, being able to work with him. Obviously, you have De Niro also, too, back from Jackie Brown, too. These are icons. These are legends. These are people who we would just, love to spend any time with, and you're getting to cast them as characters of yours. What was it like working with Pacino on this?
Well, it was fantastic. It was really, really cool because I've always been a huge fan of Al Pacino's, but in particularly, he was an actor that I really wanted to hear him say my dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah, that was he was one of the main actors out there that has not said my dialogue that I wanted to hear the words come out of his mouth. Mm. And so even before the script was done, about a year earlier, I started reaching out to him. And so we started having dinners and we started getting together. And I saw he had the play that David Mamet wrote where he kind of plays Trump on Broadway. I went and saw that.
Right.
Hung out with him afterwards. And then he was like really friendly. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then, his de facto stepdaughter, Candie, all right, was in my friend Eli Roth's movie, the Death Wish film.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so I had all these neat excuses to meet Al. And so then we started actually going out to dinner, and then he got to know my fiance. And so we went out to dinner like quite a few different times, like about 6 or 7 times over the course of the last year and a half before I'd even showed him the material. And we were really kind of getting to know each other. In fact, it was even kind of we had this one moment where I was like getting into his head. We had this really one moment where it was like I'm talking to him about older actors. Want to know his take on them. And I asked him about the actor Aldo Ray. And he goes, oh, Aldo Ray was great. He was fantastic. He was like, oh, there was this moment. Oh, it was such a moment where it was like Sidney Lumet was meeting with him for the Charles Durning role in Dog Day Afternoon. And so he came in to audition, and I was just almost embarrassed that he's auditioning for me.
Wow.
But we're doing the scene together, and it's just fantastic, and it's amazing. The scene decided to go a different way, but just to be able to do the scene with him, it was just so great. And I go, you're not talking about Aldo Ray. I think you mean Ralph Meeker. He goes, yes, I do. How did you know that? I can read your mind. Fuck, I can't read yours. How did you know that? How did he know that?
That's a really good Pacino, to be honest. There's a scene in this film. I'm going to skip ahead briefly because I think it's one of the most powerful scenes in the movie that I thought a lot about after I saw it. Our producer Gabe over there, who was with us when we saw it, when we walked out of the film, we were all in love with the film, but it's a very different experience from you as a filmmaker in the sense of I felt that it was you're relaxing in these moments. We're hanging out with these characters. It's a different type of tone and pacing for you, at least from a perspective of someone who's a fan of yours. There's a moment in the movie where Pacino tells DiCaprio that your audience is going to have a psychological effect about you always playing the heavy.
Yeah.
And they're always going to think of you as the heavy if you keep playing the heavy. And I was wondering, is that coming from a place of someone like you as a filmmaker who has you have a very distinct tone and storytelling that you do? Every movie you do is different, but there's elements of your voice in all your movies. And I feel it here more because I feel like this is more of a personal film for you as a love letter to Los Angeles. Are you saying anything about how people are going to experience Hollywood in that moment and the idea, and this is something Gabe and I discussed, we psychologically expect a certain type of film from you, and then this one was very different in my opinion. Are you saying something about that? Am I reading into that? Or where did that dialogue come from?
Oh, well, I mean, it came from... It came from the reality, of the given scene, of the fact that, Rick Dalton was a heroic leading man. And that's, and Jake Cahill owns his own bones as being a Western icon from that time. However, if he's showing up with Ron Eli and getting his ass kicked by Tarzan in this episode, and getting his ass kicked by Alias Smith and Jones in that episode, and getting his ass kicked by the $6 Million Man in another episode, and getting his ass kicked by Robert Urich on SWAT in another episode, then little by little by little, the heroic stature that he had both as a leading man is going to get chipped away because, well, apparently any swinging dick on a network show can beat the fuck out of him, right. And then also Jake Cahill himself will little by little get tarnished in people's minds when they watch it on when they watch it on reruns. They go, wow, that was back when he was Jake Cahill. Now I'm watching Michael Douglas kick his fucking ass on the streets of San Francisco. All right, okay. Having said that, so that's where I was coming from as far as all that was concerned. But couple of critics brought up what you're talking about. I wasn't thinking about it as any inner monologue coming out, but I have not had a problem defining myself as both a genre filmmaker and an enthusiast of genre filmmaking. Now, my whole thing is I wanted to transcend genre. On one hand, I want to transcend the genre. On another hand, I still want to deliver the goods that the genre has to offer. I don't want to do an art film meditation on genre. I want to deliver. And so if I'm doing a kung fu movie, I want it to be as good as Five Fingers of Death. Not this weird arty hybrid of that. All right. Frankly, I want it to mean a little bit more than Five Fingers of Death, but that's the thing that I'm, that's what I'm dealing with. But over the course of time, and that kind of happened a lot, especially with the think pieces, but the people who don't like me or don't like the movie, some of those tropes that they have about me have been dyed in the wool a little bit, and so they come out, and so I'm now, as defined, So if you like me, well, those can be good things. If you don't like me, those are a checklist of what you don't like about me. But frankly, to tell you the truth, though, if you go through film history, it really is a badge of honor, all right? Because that means that your work is strong, your work is vital, and if your work means something, then you're going to have real enthusiasts. But consequently, you're going to have people who really, really don't like you. And Hitchcock had that, and he had those think piece reviews that were against him in the last 10 years of his career. Peckinpah had that. He had those reviews. Ken Russell had that. All right. Oliver Stone had that. These guys were all provocateurs, and that's just if you're not going to be a provocateur, you don't have to deal with it. But if you are a provocateur, you're signing up for it.
Amen.
Piggybacking on Kevin's idea of expectations, leading up to the film's release, there was one word that people seemed to just overly attach to, which was Manson.
Yeah.
People coming into this is Tarantino's Manson movie. And then we see the movie and we realize he's really not in it that much, which I loved because he was such an egomaniac. I feel like it would drive him nuts that he wasn't really the focus of this movie. I'm curious, was that on purpose? Because talking about expectations, I don't know if you ever read the Wikipedia page for your films, there was a whole fake plot on the Wikipedia about this explosive ending with Manson, this was the complete opposite of that, which I'm so glad it was the opposite of that, because screw him.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's actually interesting, is like I had a little bit more with him, and I actually put that in the supplementary section of the DVD, the other scenes that I had with Charlie. I put that in there. One, because Damien was so fantastic. All right.
Did you see him in Mindhunter?
Yeah, of course I do. He's amazing in that. And I'm the hugest fan of his he's one of my favorite character actors that there is.
And you feel his presence the whole movie, even though he's not on screen. That's the beauty
absolutely.
of it.
Especially when she says, like Charlie would really dig you.
He's
like,
always, he's in that Spawn Ranch scene, he's in every moment for me.
That's how I feel. Yeah. That's how I feel. And I didn't want to put that, ultimately, the way it worked out, I didn't want to put that in the movie, but I didn't mind putting it in here. Because now that you've seen the movie, you can look at you can appreciate what Damon did. You can appreciate what Damon did. And then also you can see, this is a little bit more that he had dealing with that culture. And I was pretty happy with Manson's dialogue in it too. I had to find the right cadence for his speech patterns, and I think I did a pretty good job. But one of the things I was going to say earlier on, when you asked the question about how things would change, and I got lost. I lost one of the trains of thought that I wanted to go to, and you brought it back now by bringing it up. One of the biggest changes that would have happened if Cielo Drive didn't happen is if Cielo Drive didn't happen, the La Bianca murders would never have happened. So there would be no Manson ethos. There would be no Charles Manson as a cult figure. There would be no Charles Manson as this like sinister pop culture ephemeral hero / villain. All right, that has existed for the last 40 years. you would never know his name. You would never know who he is. He would just continue going on the way he was. The kids would eventually split up. All right, they would get rousted out of Spawn Ranch one time too many, and then they would, and it all would have dissipated. And this, and where that would, that would change true crime history irrevocably. But it would also even change the history of Los Angeles. It's like Charlie and his quote unquote family are a part of the fabric of the history of Los Angeles from that time and then from all that time afterwards. I mean, to even such a degree, and I get it, young actors come out to Hollywood and they make a pilgrimage up to Cielo Drive at midnight. Margot did it. Margot said she, on the night of the murders, one night, her and a buddy walked up Cielo Drive and hid in the bushes and read Helter Skelter by flashlight.
Oh, wow.
That's
No
insane.
kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's, but all the girls playing the family members in the movie were really enraptured with, they're not enraptured with Charlie and the killings that happened, but they were enraptured by the mythos.
Right.
And that's, and especially when you're young, that mythos is enrapturing.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Of course.
So like they did tons of research that I didn't have to ask them to do. They did it. They showed up on the set of Spawn Ranch with all their little relationships and the little massagey kind of things that the characters do. All that stuff, like where like Lena's kind of just always touching Margaret, and Margaret's always kind of touching Lena as they kind of. I didn't direct any of that. They just did it. They watched. I gave them all the stuff to watch, and then they had a lot of time together. So they figured all that stuff out.
Even just their physical camaraderie when they first cross Brad's car. With the amazing Mrs. Robinson beat drop.
Yeah.
They have such a chemistry to them that they just look like a family as they're crossing.
Absolutely. No, I literally, shooting them was like shooting a documentary. Like when they're dumpster diving, I set them up and they just do it. And then I can just film. And I can throw anything at them. Okay, you find the hot dog buns. You do this, you do that. But other than that, it's just film them.
Right. It's amazing. Quentin, you famously got your start in a video store.
Yeah.
And I'm an old also. So I remember spending hours just perusing covers forever. But this next generation, you were able to sort of surround yourself with that passion.
Yeah.
Those stores don't exist anymore, or they're few and far between. Where does that next generation of filmmaker coming up, find that video store inspiration? Because streaming doesn't seem to be the answer to me.
Well, it was funny because actually, I never had Netflix here, but I ended up getting Netflix in Tel Aviv because that's where my wife is. And so I ended up getting Netflix in Tel Aviv. And then when I got it there, I was like, oh, hey, this is kind of fun. I kind of see why people like this. This is really cool. And then when I came back to Los Angeles, I wanted to meet with Ted Sarandos and just let him, because he's been always very, very complimentary to me and everything. And I wanted to let him know, hey, I got the system now and I like it and I appreciated it. But I said to him, I go, if I've got, can I tell you a couple problems that I have? And he's like, yeah, sure, I want to hear. I go, look, my big problem is when I looked up 70s cinema, I was surprised by how paltry it was.
Right.
I go, I looked up Burt Reynolds to see what you had playing. And I know that they change every month. I looked up Burt Reynolds to see what you had playing. You had 4 movies. And 2 of them were The Longest Yard.
Oh, no. They love Sandler. They really do love Sandler. Oh, that's terrible.
Okay, so you have 4 Burt Reynolds movies and 2 of them were The Longest Yard.
That hurts so much.
He winced. He winced in front of me.
Right. That's so funny.
You told me when we spoke for Django that whenever you worked at the video store, that a lot of times kids would come up to you and say, look, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for something that's X, Y, and Z, something that does this for me. What would a kid have to come up and say to you now for you to go over, take an old dusty copy of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, dust it off, put it on the counter, and say, "This is what you're looking for"?
Well, here's the truth. It was rarely kids who did that. It was mostly housewives.
Okay, interesting.
It was mostly housewives.
Why is that?
Well, no, because they're the kids have a good idea what they want to see and what they don't want to see that they're going to watch with their friends. The housewife is like, she's choosing like almost like they did in the old days. It was like it was the wives that chose the movie that the whole family, like in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, that the whole family would see, because they're the ones reading Film Fan and Modern Screen and kind of keep up with a little bit like what's hip and what's not. And so like they're the ones that chose the movie. And then the whole family went and saw what they, now if the husband likes Audie Murphy, then he goes and sees that stuff. But you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
And no, best years of our life. You're gonna like it. It's really good. Harold Russell, he's really good in the movie. We want to support him. And so the housewives were the ones like picking the 3 videos,
right?
Yeah, and I actually I prided myself on not just shoving the stuff that I liked down their throats. I prided myself on trying to kick into who they were and what they liked, and try to put something in their hands that they would like. People are like, well, I want something funny. Well, give me a couple of examples of comedies that you like, and then I have an idea, all right? So if they said Tootsie and they said this or they said that, well, then I had a good idea. If they said Caddyshack, then I had a better idea, And so, so I would always get a good romantic movie. Well, but that's a really wide open subject. I can definitely point you to some movies that I think are romantic, but what do you think? Give me a couple of romantic movies that you think are romantic. And so, and they would tell me, and I would put movies in their hands that I didn't particularly care for, but I thought they would like. So that all kind of thing happened. This is not exactly answering this is more answering your question than answering your
No,
question.
I'm fascinated by this. No, I'm all for it.
Pinballing back is.
We're not scorekeeping. It's okay.
Frankly, I think if you don't have video stores to go to where you get to see the whole, I never knew that the video boxes in the horror section would become so iconic in my memory. To me, they were just the video boxes of the horror section.
Remember the Dead Alive box?
Yeah.
That was awesome. Brain Dead or whatever it was called.
Or the Dead and Buried box, or any of the
Army of Darkness.
Yeah. Or any of the slasher films that you never even saw theatrically, but they were always in the horror section.
Which was a baby cradle, I want to say.
Which one?
It's Alive, I think.
Yeah, It's Alive was definitely the baby cradle. And It's Alive, and It Lives Again is the 2 baby cradles. And it was a Warner Brothers film, so it was a Warner Brothers green clamshell box.
The bigger ones, right?
Yeah. With the green color.
Yes.
Didn't Exorcist have one of those?
I think Exorcist did have one. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
All right. And so the thing is, I never realized that for an entire generation of kids growing up in the 80s, during that time when, they were 14 or 15 coming into the video store that I was working in, that whole horror section, that whole video shelves would like become this iconic thing, the way movie posters are to me. I think the answer to the question is where they're going to find that, frankly, is in podcasts.
Hey.
Or Amoeba Music, if you can go there.
And that's still DVDs for sale, and that's a little different, and it's whatever's available now, even though they do a pretty good job of all that. Yeah. I will admit that.
Not looking for like a pat on the back, but like for the press tour for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you did more podcasts than like sit down TV interviews. Why is that? Because we always used to get you for TV for Django and Bastards and everything, but this film was different. Why is that?
Well, frankly, I didn't really feel, I didn't feel that the 5 to 6 minute to 7 minute entertainment journalist aspect was the way to.
We did our best.
Sell this movie. Yeah. I didn't think I didn't think that was where 3 of the questions will be the same in every one of them and whatever. I actually thought that you would get a better sense of me if I went on movie-oriented podcast, all right, that I had actually listened to, that I had I knew what I was walking into. I wasn't walking into a fucking propeller, all right. I knew what I was getting into. I had a sense of the personalities. I had a sense of your voices. I had a sense of the give and take, and I had a sense of what you all liked. And you don't always have to like me, but you get it. I get the show. I liked it.
Yeah.
All right. And so thus I could go on, and then I could be me. And it was movie oriented.
Yeah, of course.
It was all movie oriented. You guys were all movie fans, and we can be talking about my movie, and we could shift into another movie, and we could shift into this, and we could shift into that. And I thought that was a better use of my time, because I actually thought you got more of me in that situation. And also I just find those things more interesting. I do really like the fun, for the most part, movie oriented podcast. And the thing about it is, when you guys you're always dealing with the movies that come out, but you're constantly relating them to movies from the past, and so it's like a Mike Flanagan episode could be just as much about the history of horror cinema in general as Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. Or Kubrick.
All right,
We
depending
start
on
talking
how
about
this
Kubrick.
deals with versus that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna. You mentioned liking our show, and I'm gonna be a fan just for a second here, because when I was in college and Kill Bill came out, I went and saw it multiple times opening weekend. And this was very special to me, because when I was watching that film for the first time, I had read online that the House of Blue Leaves scene was in full color in the Japanese release. And I ordered the $120 like really cool box set that my wife still has, the Okinawa shirt, which she just wore. We went to Okinawa recently.
I bet she looks cute in it, because it's a cute shirt.
I'll show you a photo. It's a great shirt, but it was in that box.
He's not going to disagree with you about that.
It was in that box for all those years,
Yeah.
and she's the first person to ever wear it. So I bring that up because when I got that DVD, seeing that scene in full color was always amazing to me. And I ended up taking Japanese in college because of that movie. It influenced me more than anything. And I'm going to show you my new tattoo in a second, but that's another thing. I have a Kill Bill one. But I want to bring this up because I always found this interesting. With the House of Blue Leaves sequence going to black and white, I've always wanted to ask you the specific idea of how you decided where you were going to start the black and white and end it. Because originally, I believe you planned on that being in full color, and the MPA did not like the spraying of the blood and all that blood. Can you talk about that conversation you had with them specifically, what that change was like for you to have to actually alter your film based on a rating system, and kind of how you came to the conclusion of getting it the way you did?
Cool. Can we pause for just a second while I run to the restroom? And
Yes.
then I'm ready to answer the
All right,
question?
cool.
Yeah.
We're directing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you believe they're doing a Top Gun sequel?
Well, it's funny. I know Tom a little bit, and I asked him about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I go, so you're doing a Top Gun sequel? He goes, yeah, we're doing it. I go, how can you do that without Tony? And
That's the question.
And he was like, and he goes like, I know. He goes, like, I agree with that. I understand. That's how we always thought about it. But then I think it was a guy who did Oblivion actually came up with the story. He goes,
Joseph Kosinski, right?
yeah, he goes, he came up with a really great story. He came up with a great story that really worked, that I really enjoyed taking the character further in that way. And it was like, the script. He goes, the answer to your question is the script.
Okay.
They came up with a really good idea.
Cool.
Back to the Blue Leaves.
Well, yeah, and I guess before you answer the question, I'm going to show you this.
Holy shit. That's already Hanzo's sword.
And it's actually healing. I got it last week, and that says Kill Bill.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Bravo.
man. She did a really good job.
We got phase
hours,
pictures in our text.
That's kind of amazing.
Look at the
that's
shading on the Hattori logo and
Yes,
everything.
I
yeah.
know. No, it's absolutely right there, man.
Torihanto.
Yeah, Hattori Hanzo. Yeah, Hattori Hanzo.
Yeah, the Akaido bear.
If you come, what's that line? If you come across God, God will be cut. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
God,
yeah.
one of the best lines ever.
Yeah, the Okinawa bear right there.
man.
Yeah, Okinawa lion. Excuse me,
Yes,
Okinawa
yes.
lion.
Wait,
Yeah.
I gotta ask real fast, Quentin. Do you have tattoos?
No, I don't.
No. If
Does this weird you out?
Kevin
that I
gets a
have
lot
this?
of movie-related tattoos for movies that are very passionate, like he's very passionate about. If you were to get one, what's a movie that you would want to have on your body forever?
Well, the reason I don't have any tattoos is because there's nothing I want on my body forever.
Does it bother you that I have?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I consider it. No, I'm very tickled. All right, when you show me that, other people have showed me ink that they've done that like I mean that to me is the ultimate attaboy.
That's why I told you the Kill Bill story. Going back to that is because like we all grew up on movies, and your filmography just happened to be during the time period that I grew up.
Yeah.
So you are the big reason why I've seen Rio Bravo. You're the big reason why I've gone back and watched all these films.
Just even looking at your arm, looking at put your arm the way the sleeve normally
peeks
falls.
out.
All right, just the fact that like the end of the blade is like always kind of sticking out.
It kind of reminds me of Clooney's tattoo in From Dusk Till Dawn, where he is kind of up on his neck a little bit.
That's one of the best reveals when he takes the jacket
Yeah.
off
And
to
then it's like
finally
a sleeve.
show the
I almost got You're So Cool right here. I haven't done that one yet. There's still time for that on the napkin.
Still time.
Talking about fandom,
I gotta answer his,
The MPA question.
yeah, okay. So to answer your question, no, it's not exactly the way I think you think it is. The way you presented it.
This is why I asked.
To me, yeah. I had a wonderful relationship with the MPA, and especially with Joan Graves. That nobody was in anybody's pocket. She had a job to do, and I had a job to do. But she actually did like my movies, and she appreciated what I was trying to do. And I was willing to work with her, and she was willing to work with me, and it lasted for my entire career. All right, and she just retired just recently. But there was even a point in the case of Pulp Fiction where she was just she wasn't the head of the MPA. Richard Hefner was the head of the MPA then, and she was just like assigned to my movie. And so we were dealing with an aspect of the film, and I knew because Richard Hefner had this whole thing of he was going to stop this violence in movies in his last year if there was one thing he did. And he had really ran herd over True Romance in a really bad way. And so the head never gets into it unless it comes into arbitration. So I'm never going to go to arbitration because I don't want Richard Hefner sticking his big nose in this thing.
Right.
So I'm going to make it work with the board that they give me. And Joan was the head of that board. And finally it came down to we're working together. Everything's going fine. And I make a cut, and she comes back and she says, you need to take a few more frames out. I know what I said, and I mean what I said. It's just a little too long. It's a little too lingering. If you take a few frames out, you'll get your R. I promise you, Quentin, you'll have an R. Just bear with me. Take a few more frames out, and I promise you, we'll be happy. We can give it an R and feel okay about the R, and your movie will absolutely survive. Not a problem. Just I'm asking you to go a little deeper, but just bear with me. I go, okay, Joan. Okay, I'll do it. And then I did it. Now Richard Hefner hears about it, and he's like, okay, so what's going on with this Tarantino movie? Because I'm already a known entity from Reservoir Dogs and True Romance. All right, so what's with this Tarantino? Well, it's okay, Richard. This is Joan. It's okay, Dick. Everything's fine. And well, I want to see it. I said, well, no need. I mean, he hasn't called for arbitration. Everything. I want to see it. So she shows him the sequence. Not the whole movie, but the sequence.
In full color.
Yeah, in full color. And we're not talking about Kill Bill. We're talking about Pulp Fiction at the time. Yeah, this is Pulp Fiction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
which scene in Pulp Fiction are you referring to?
Well, I'm being ambiguous.
Okay,
I got you. Oh, okay.
I'm being ambiguous.
Okay,
I'm being
I got
on
you.
purpose.
I got you.
All right, and he looks at it, and he goes, "Well, that's not enough. He has to take more out." And she goes, "Well, no, Richard. I told him." No, if he did this, I would give him an R. I go, well, I'm sorry, it's just not enough. And she goes, well, then, Richard, then I have to resign.
Wow.
Wow.
Good for her.
because I made a deal with him, and if my word means nothing, then I can't work for this organization any longer. And he goes, okay, fine, it's fine, let it go. And then she became the head of the MPAA. Okay. And so, and we had a good relationship built on negotiation and trust and understanding. She's got a job to do, and I got a job to do, and no one's trying to monkey with the other one. At the same time, it's my job to be strategic because I want to get done what I want to get done. Sure. So, in the case of Kill Bill, I realized early on that, like, obviously people are going to talk about the violence in the movie. Well, it's a kung fu movie, and I'm even jumping off from, like some of the 70s samurai gonzo kind of movies like Baby Cart from Hell and stuff like that. So that's an aesthetic jumping off point. And so I'm thinking about that, and I go, okay, how do I win the battle and the war? And the violence is a given. I have no problem with the violence. It's going to be the red blood that gets me, though. Americans can't look at it the right way. Europeans can't. White people can't look at it the right way. In Asia, they get it. They get it in Asia. They get it in Italy, oddly enough, but they don't. They're not going to get it in England, and they're not going to get it in America. If it's just a wash in blood, that will be a Surgeon General warning in every single review. You'll drown in blood. You'll drown in blood. The blood, the blood, the blood, the blood, the blood, the blood, the blood. When they say drowned in blood, what are they really saying? They're saying drowned in red.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's about the red of the blood. It's not about the blood. It's not about the intellectual idea of blood. It's about a visceral reaction to flowing liquid red.
Sure. It's almost like Scorsese in Taxi Driver. I think his was almost more orange.
Yeah. And so I'm giving them this 40-minute nonstop cut limbs, and people have garden hoses for veins, all right? And, arm gets lopped off, and it's like the Bellagio fountain, all right, shoots out of them. And I got that from Shogun Assassin, and Baby Cart at the River Styx, and all those, like, really groovy Japanese movies. So I had a whole scheme where it's like, okay, look, we're not going to get the first go around. I mean, we're definitely not going to get it the first go around, but we're not even going to get it the second go around. We're not going to get it the third go around. We're going to get it the fourth go around. Okay, it's a process. We're going to have to go through it, and we got to get them there, and we'll get them there by the fourth screening. And so then the whole plan was, okay, we show them something horrendous at the beginning. They see that. And then I cut it down a little bit and then show it to them a second time. And then, okay, well, it's a little better the second time. And then they give me some notes. And then I work on those notes. And they were also really good because, like, they give you notes and maybe you can't do that note, but you can do something else that then affects the overall. So that note's not addressed, but now the overall is a little different because you did what you did. And the whole idea was to get through 3 rounds of notes from them. And then on the 4th, go to black and white.
Oh, okay.
And then when I go to black and white, they go, oh, okay, well, fine. Well, now, great. Everything's fine.
Wow. Okay.
Now you got your R. So that was the whole plan. Now, the wrinkle in the plan was we did better in the first 3 passes than I ever expected us to do.
Oh, wow.
So much so that I could have gone out with it in color. If I had done like a couple of minute things for that fourth screening, we would have gotten an R with it in color.
Wow.
What you didn't think. And so I had to think, okay, do I want it in color in America? For the Western world.
Yeah.
Do I want it in color for the Western world? Or was I right all along? Was I right all along that the onslaught of red will have a negative effect on the audience and the prognosticators of the audience when they talk about the movie? If we kept it all in color for the entire sequence, then it's just a bloody movie. And that is all people will talk about. I don't mind it in Asia because they get it.
Right.
But these Americans just don't get it. They just don't get it. That's all they will talk about. So, you know, and I actually think it's kind of cool when it turns to black and white. You know, so I mean, it literally is a situation where I get to, very rarely does it happen when you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, sure.
And to me, you get to have your cake and eat it too. And there always was the Japanese version. Right. So that was always out there. So if you wanted to see it that way, you could. So, you know, so that was the huge decision when I could have gotten everything I wanted. But then, no, there was a reason for the George Bush pronunciation of the strategery, all right, you know, that I put into place at the beginning. And like, no, keep going on that idea.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. And do you see my point of where I'm coming from about the idea of being, about just the blood just being a bridge that could never be crossed?
Yeah. I figured after De Palma's Carrie, we're okay with anything.
Yeah.
How does Cooper get away with the elevator scene? I mean, it's insane.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
it's abstract.
You're right. It's
abstract.
It's not as brutal, I guess.
art.
Well, it's abstract. It's a little image. It's not something that's happening, and like there's a cause and effect of it. I chop somebody's arm off. There's a cause and effect for why the blood's happening.
Thank you for telling that story. I've actually always wanted to ask that. Thank you for
Fascinated
answering.
as a filmmaker too. Like when you've come into the industry, you don't even think about battles with the MPAA. You know, you just want to make your
oddly enough, in a
story.
weird way, I did for the simple fact that I grew up reading Fangoria magazine.
Okay.
With every filmmaker, all these motherfuckers are Nazis, and my God, the fucking motherfuckers.
Were you excited for your first battle with them?
No, I realized that these guys are wrong, all right? De Palma's approach with the MPA was wrong. Wes Craven's approach with the MPA was wrong. These fucking Nazis, how dare they fucking do this to me? All right, it was like, well, of course you're not going to get along with them if that's the way you're fucking talking about them in the press. Right. If you're treating them that way, all right? Like, I got to make friends with these guys. They have a power over me that no studio is ever going to have.
Yeah, it's true.
And then oddly enough, the reverse ended up happening. I had a fantastic relationship with them. And see, the studios are used to using the MPAA as the bad guys. All right? They don't have to be the bad guys because the MPAA is going to be the bad guy. So they get to sit on the sideline and go, hey, it's not our fucking fault.
Yeah, right. Like they're defending you.
You're contracted for an R. So as long as you deal with them and get your R, and then you talk to us.
Right.
I got R's on like horrendous fucking shit. And the studio had now the studio actually had to we want you to cut it now. All right. This is too much. All right. But they actually had to like step on the line of fire and let those guys be the bad guys.
Wow. I would love to watch the MPA watching the Tim Roth scene in the car in Reservoir Dogs. They're probably flipping out over how red the blood was on his shirt. I'm dying, man.
Big Name says, the MPA is going to let that guy do this to me? The guy in the mask?
Oh, my God.
Even when it came to Reservoir Dogs, that was before I was actually dealing with them personally. We had somebody at Live that was handling that. But then when we made our little choices and made our little cuts, and then the MPAA guy told the guy at Live, he goes, hey, look, you tell the director, as far as we're concerned, that he made some tough choices, but I think he made the right choices for his movie, and his movie works intellectually and artistically. He made no compromises. We're actually proud of how he took our notes.
Which is interesting because that Kill Bill scene is more comical. It's more of like a fun moment. Yeah.
Well, thinking about fandom, we were talking obviously with Kevin here. We were talking about like ultra fandom. You were very kind to Kevin and myself a few weeks ago when we saw you at the restaurant at the Four Seasons, and you were trying to eat. You were in the corner. I think you were maybe talking.
I had
with
no
someone.
idea that I was there
Yes.
during the Irishman
Yes.
press
And you were
junket.
being-
Scorsese was across the hall, literally.
Yeah.
And we literally joked, when you walk into a restaurant and notice that it's a BFCA event, how do you not just turn
around and leave,
and
yeah.
get out
Yeah.
of there as quickly as possible?
I considered it.
And I get that. And so you were being surrounded by people. Like people were asking
I
you.
know, but I'd driven all the way there, parked the car.
Already hit.
He stayed, I'd have gotten out of there so fast.
We were trying to get out of there, and we were part of the BFCA. But people were asking for photos. People were like all over you, and you took a couple of minutes out of your time, and you were very kind to myself and Kevin. And I'm curious as to like fan protocol. Someone in your position, I would imagine people are coming up to you all the time asking for photos, asking for your time, asking for this. What is, from your perspective, what's proper fan protocol? If someone sees you out in the street, what's the best way to have a positive situation for you that works with both you and them?
That's easy. Don't ask for a photo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Don't ask for a photo. I'm not going to give you a photo. All right. And not only am I not going to give you a photo, it's going to vaguely tarnish the encounter. If you ask,
Don't ask for a photo.
if you ask for a photo, but just coming up and saying, I like your movies and like wanting to shake my hand and, then I'll get your name and everything. And if you don't ask for a photo, I mean, depending on what the situation is, I might even engage you like a little bit longer. Yeah. If you ask for a photo, a glass wall comes up and I try to say no in a nice way and everything, but I ain't giving you a photo.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, but I mean, it rubs me the wrong way because it means like, I don't think you even really want to meet me. You just want
A piece of me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that out there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to Hollywood because I'm just curious. I do stunt casting all the time. I like to have fun with what if this happened or that happened.
Yeah.
What if early in your process, Brad and Leo came to you and said, Quentin, we've been talking about it amongst ourselves. We think we're a better fit if we switch roles. Would you have ever listened to them?
Not in this case.
Okay.
I mean, like I can imagine a situation you're doing True West or something like, hey, let me play this guy and let me play that guy. And
Right.
I think there was a discussion like that with William Hurt and Rod Julia with Kiss of the Spider Woman or something. But like, maybe should we switch roles? But no, I actually think they're cast really well. And for like, is Rick being Leo being the actor and Cliff being the stunt guy. Now there could be a couple different alliterations of the casting where something like that could work. But I don't think but that would be more stunty in this case. I actually think Leo is perfect for the character he's playing, and Brad's perfect for the character he's playing.
Gotcha.
My wife and I were in Japan recently, as I mentioned, and we went to Gonpachi, which was awesome. And in there, you obviously walk in. My wife surprised me. She actually didn't tell me where we were going. She was like, we're going to go to this place. I want you to walk in, and I want you to look at it and tell me what you notice. I walk in, and I immediately go, Kill Bill. I mean, it was like the way it was designed. And I was, I saw your photo in there, and I believe this is a story, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you went there to eat and then kind of inspired the way that scene ended up looking.
It gave us, I had my own design for the restaurant, and the own design for the restaurant kind of found its own way. I was kind of lost until I kind of figured out what the restaurant would look like. The only thing about that place was the concept of the stairwell.
Yes.
All right. Surrounding it. All right. So that really locked us in. That's what we in particular took from that place.
So the question for you then is, what are other places you've been to that have inspired a scene in any of your movies, like a restaurant you ate at, wherever you went, that we can now look back at Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or Ambassadors or Django and go, Quentin went to this place and it inspired the look of that moment?
Well, God, I don't know if there's that many of them. I mean, there was I guess Jackrabbit Slims was pretty much inspired by a crazy Planet Hollywood version of there was a series of 50s cafes in the 80s and 90s called Cafe 50s. And I think there's only one left actually. I think
have to go there.
I think there's one in Venice on Venice Boulevard. That was the first one, but there's still one by the Newark. All right, on Santa Monica Boulevard. That's still that one's still going, but there was a few of them all the way. And then there was Ed DeBevick's. That was kind of this crazy Farrell's kind of place. All right, but Cafe 50s. So the idea though, but like I said, a Planet Hollywood version of Cafe 50s. In fact, it was funny because Harvey Weinstein kept wanting me to do a real Jackrabbit Slims.
Which I want you to do a real Jackrabbit
the
Slim.
way they had like Planet Hollywood. We'll get a couple of stars and we'll back it up and we'll open a bunch of Jackrabbit Slims across the nation. It'll be fantastic. And I'm like, Harvey, I'm kind of making fun of these places. I remember I spent about like a page and a half describing Jackrabbit Slims to the nth degree. And then after I got through describing everything about it, I go, this is either the best or the worst of these places, depending on your point of view.
That's awesome. I want to get to go back to casting for a little bit because I get really excited when a director pulls the same actor back repeatedly, and you have people who are part of your ensemble, the Tim Roths, Michael Madsen's, and I'm always excited, like, oh, how is he going to use them this time? Sam, especially, right? You always use Sam in many different ways. But there are other examples of actors that you've only worked with one time. Like I mentioned McTiernan's Die Hard. Bruce Willis to me was really important. So when Bruce Willis showed up in Pulp Fiction, I was like, oh, this could be great. Quentin's going to work with him a lot.
Yeah.
But then you don't. And I'm just curious, what's the difference between the people that you bring back, versus an actor who you had one particular role for? Do you ever try to get another role for a Bruce Willis or a Travolta or someone like that?
Well, look, in the case of like, I think, Bruce especially, I think really wanted to be in a few more movies and everything. And around the time of Pulp Fiction, I thought that was going to be the case. In every single situation, it's not a situation of, oh, well, this is an actor that I've worked with once and I've had my time with him and now that time is over. But these are the guys that I like more and I want to bring them in. It doesn't break down like that. It's about the characters. It's about the characters I'm writing. And especially at a certain point, once I got out of the 90s, once I was out of the 90s, I was less inclined to fall in love with an actor and what I could do for an actor and what I could do with their persona and then take them into my world and fit it around them so they would shine, which I think was kind of where I was coming from a lot in the 90s.
Robert Forster.
Yeah. But starting from the but Robert Forster actually is just such a perfect fit for Max Cherry. All right. So I think he would have won that role regardless. But from the 2000s on, I mean, I guess with the exception of Uma Thurman, because I completely built Kill Bill around Uma Thurman. But with the exception of Uma, I think it was a situation where from that point on, I started taking my characters more seriously.
Oh, interesting.
And so some of the decisions I made in the 90s, I might not have made in the 2000s, all right? Because it was more about the character and finding the best actor for that character and not so much caring about that actor's persona and everything they'd done up until that and how I would make it work and the cause and effect that this could have on their career. It was more about, no, it's about my character. I got to get my character right and I have to bring my character to fruition via this actor. I got one chance at it. Here it is. And so in that instance, I have yet to write, I think John Travolta is a fantastic actor. I think Bruce Willis is a fantastic actor. Harvey Keitel is an amazing actor. I've yet to write a character from the 2000s on that I thought that they were the perfect person to do it. I mean, frankly, the closest would have been Bruce because I wrote Bill for Warren Beatty and it ended up not working out. And then I cast David Carradine and then I kind of rewrote it for David Carradine. Bruce would have been my third choice.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it would
can't
have been
imagine not
You
Carradine
needed to
not being
rewrite it
there.
again?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it would have been when I read the original version of Kill Bill, it kind of cracks me up now because it's the Warren Beatty version.
Okay.
And look, the point of it is when you watch it, I want you to not think that I can't imagine anybody but David Carradine playing the role. I want you to think that. But when I look at that original version, Bill was a little bit more of a evil James Bond type.
Okay.
Rather than the Bondian villain.
Yeah.
He was more a Bond, an evil Bond. All right. And he kind of had he had a Warren Beatty kind of quality about him. And frankly, to tell you the truth, I probably wouldn't have to have rewritten it that much if I had cast Bruce in it. Bruce could have actually played that evil James Bond kind of character. And I would have just leaned into his personality maybe just a little bit more. I mean, a little more, a little less Cristal, a little bit more Coors. All right, a little less champagne, a little more beer. All right, which I think is part of Bruce's charm.
Yeah, sure.
All right, but that would have been a slight lean in. That would have been a slight lean in.
If that would have felt stunty though.
What?
I wonder if it would have felt stunty.
I don't think so. No, I think I can imagine Bruce and Uma doing that
Sitting on
scene
that
at
couch?
the end. Yeah, I can imagine him being
But Carradine
terrific.
delivering that Superman dialogue. I just can't imagine anyone else doing that.
Can you imagine
Well, that's the idea, man. Because I did it right.
Can you imagine Christoph is playing Blofeld now? Is that hilarious that Christoph is playing Blofeld in the Bond franchise now?
I didn't really care for Skyfall, but I dug Spectre.
We're on the opposite end of that one. That's so
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, no, I really liked Spectre. I thought Skyfall was like, what, this whole fucking movie's ending at a shootout at a fucking cabin? This is a James Bond movie?
Mendez was doing a little bit of Nolan
what
there.
the fuck is this? Like wannabe fucking Straw Dogs bullshit. All right? And like a fucking farmer is helping him out? This is like James fucking Bond?
Yeah,
What the
no,
fuck is
Spectre
this
was like a
crap?
laboratory in a desert.
Yeah, Spectre, no,
That's
but from the opening action sequence in Spectre on, I was like, okay, now this is a James Bond movie.
You're funny. That's funny.
So Kevin and I both interviewed John Travolta separately earlier this summer, and he expressed to both of us his continued desire to do something we talked about last time we all spoke, which is Vega Brothers.
Said he would 100% do it if you wanted to do
And
it.
I made a joke last time we spoke about, because we had heard about the de-aging and Irishman and everything, and he kind of went like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. You've seen Irishman now.
Yes,
I'm curious as to this loaded question, your thoughts on how that de-aging process finally worked out, and would you ever reconsider using it for Vega Brothers?
I wouldn't consider using it for Vega Brothers. All right.
Vega Brothers is just not happening.
No, I mean, it will be a graphic novel if it was going to be anything.
I would read that. I would read that.
I'd buy it.
I would read that.
Can we do a Mad Magazine version of that? Yeah. I'd watch that. Let's read that.
Well, by the way, okay, that first Mad Magazine, I haven't read this issue yet, but the first Mad Magazine I thought was so funny, I wanted to film it. All right, I thought it was, I would have dramatized that. All right, no, I don't think I'd do that as my last movie, but I could see it as, like I said, I could see it as a graphic novel or something like that. Yeah.
So what did you think of the de-aging process of Irishman?
Well, it was interesting. I didn't really have a problem with it. I saw it at the theaters.
It's your number one movie of the year, right? Your favorite
Well, yeah,
yeah.
Have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Because it's
yeah.
Because that's my number one film of the year.
It's quite good. My I don't count my movies when I'm counting the best of the decade or the best of the year. All right, if I did, well, then I'd stop counting.
And the funny part about it, he's right.
But it's interesting though because I saw it at the movie theaters, and I got used to it pretty quickly, and then I kind of really didn't think about it. However, I watched it on television. I watched the first 20 minutes on television the other day, and I have to say that the aging process made more of an. I noticed it more. I noticed it more reduced to a smaller screen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As opposed to watching it on the big screen. You know, by the time that the Stuckies scene was over, I wasn't thinking about it anymore. Here, I was kind of noticing it more, but that was only the first 20
Young
minutes.
Pesci still looks good in it. you
Yeah,
know?
I think so too.
I
I
think
think
the
so
biggest
too.
thing is when they move. Like, there's a scene where, like, and I love the movie, but when De Niro goes out that window and kicks that guy, it looks like a 80-year-old person kicking somebody.
Yeah, I'm not quite putting. Like, I'm not trying to see. Yeah, I'm not putting that under that kind of microscope. I'm not trying to see how the trick is done.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of. I'm looking at it in general to be swept away with it rather than to put it under the microscope.
Yeah.
That cast is so incredible that when Keitel shows up, you're like, oh my God, fucking Keitel is in this too.
I know, and I actually think in a movie jam-packed with hysterical lines, I think Harvey has the funniest one in there. Do you know who runs the Happy Day?
The other laundromat?
Yeah, the Happy Day cleaning service?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I do. Oh, who? No, I
It was like a who's on first kind of situation.
Such a great delivery. That's so great.
We gotta start to wrapping up his time.
I'm gonna ask this
close us
last
out with one
question.
more. Kevin got tattooed with Quentin's stuff, so you get the last question.
This is something that I find interesting. So over the years,
Yeah, I guess that deserves
that
a
earns
letter.
it, right?
well,
That
thank
is
you, Sean. I appreciate it. True Romance is my favorite script you ever wrote. Not to say I think it's the best. I just think it's my favorite script you ever wrote. Everything you've ever written and all your movies are some of my favorite movies of all time. So it's really kind of like picking your favorite child, to be honest. But I still think, in my mind, my favorite monologue you've ever written is Walkin' Hopper sequence in True Romance. I mean, that scene, the Chesterfield sound effect. I have a Chesterfield poster in my house because of that sequence. Gandolfini behind him. I mean, it's just the whole scene is just a masterpiece. And the way they deliver that dialogue is incredible. When I spoke to you at Django, and I actually at Grindhouse, you said that you were writing a scene that you thought was going to top that moment. And that scene ended up being the opening of Inglourious Bastards. When I met you at Django, you said at that day that you still think that the opening monologue of Bastards is your best monologue you've ever written. Why? Can you talk to me about why you think that one? Is that still the case? And what are your thoughts on someone like me thinking that the True Romance moment is just a particular favorite? And why is Bastards your favorite opening or monologue?
Look, it's. Oh, I have no problem that you would like the Inglourious, the
love
True.
all of them,
Yeah,
but
but I have no problem that you put the True Romance one at the top of the list. I mean, to me, it's like when it comes to standalone scenes, all right, that work. But primarily work because of the dialogue inside of them. I mean, because frankly, to tell you the truth, I actually think the Spawn Ranch scene is just as good as either one of those two scenes. But it's not about the dialogue, even though the dialogue is good in it.
Tension.
Yeah, and that's also more directed. All right, that's a directed and an acted scene. It's good in the script when you read it, but it's not the standalone that the True Romance one and the Inglourious Bastard one is, because it's not built around dialogue. You can do kids in an acting class will be able to do the scene from Inglourious Bastards and the scene from True Romance from Here to Eternity. You can't really quite pull off the Spawn Ranch scene as in an acting class in that same way. But there also is this aspect when it comes to those two scenes, the True Romance and the Inglourious Bastards, is that they're standalone. You don't need the rest of the movie around it. They kind of work almost like little one-act plays unto themselves. And so look, that the standalone quality, the fact that it completely exists on a white piece of paper perfectly, then it also exists in the movie version with, the actors that played those roles to a fairly well, all right, in both Hopper and Walken and Denny Mouchet and Christoph. And literally, the standalone quality that like, they work even independently of the movie surrounding them. I think they're, if you're breaking my scenes down into hit records, I think they would be my two biggest hits.
Why do you personally love the Bastards one the most? And I'll end on that, sorry.
Yeah, well, I guess because, I think there's probably a couple of reasons actually. It's longer, so I pulled it off more. I mean, I doubled the time, and to I think a greater effect rather than a lesser effect. I think there's absolute tension in the True Romance scene, but I think there's more tension. I think there's more tension in the Bastards, so it actually becomes a suspense sequence in a way that the True Romance one doesn't. All right, it's still there. But this is it's full on suspense at a certain point. Sure. I think there's a really a neat trick to a dramatic reveal about the idea that it is just dialogue until we review the Jews underneath the floorboards, which happens midway through, which that kicks the scene into a whole different area.
Speaking of wraparound shots, comes around and goes
down. Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that like a quarter of it is in a different language.
That's true.
So I guess, and that also True Romance already existed. So I had to top it. And I knew I had never topped it. All right. So that was a goal to reach.
Right.
All right. Sports analogy, you have a magnificent game with a magnificent score, and you're always trying to, have another game where you reach that score with that type of team. All right. And that's what I did. So there was, so it existed in a world where the True Romance already existed. And so to finally be able to get a leg up on it for the reasons I said.
That's what I absolutely love about Mr. Tarantino is how you have that hunger still every single time of like to beat yourself. There's so many other directors who just coast on their laurels. Like, I had that success. That's it. I'm going to live off of the fat of fill in the blank. And you never do that.
That's why I'm kind of, getting out while the getting's good, dropping the mic while it's still about, pushing it forward. Yeah.
Look what Marty just did.
Yeah.
Look what Marty just did. You could do that.
Look, but
Please keep making
But
movies.
look, here's
Please.
Look, here's
More tattoos.
But here, if for that alone,
We're gonna keep the tattoo business alive.
that might change my mind. Yeah.
That's the reason. You should.
Curious to see where they end up, actually.
This has been such an incredible experience. It's an understatement to say how happy we were to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And to do it proper and an extended version.
An extended version. The director's cut. We're going to call this one. Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Yeah.
So
It's
thank you
one
very
movie. You know it's one movie. Stop
Yeah,
it.
don't cut it in half. Don't cut it in half.
Kill Bill
All
is
right.
one movie and it will always
Fine,
be
very
one
much.
movie.
Quentin,
I want
thank
to
you.
see the whole bloody affair. Eventually in my lifetime, I'm going to watch that in 35 in full.
We show it every couple of years at the New Beverly.
I've never seen it.
We've shown it every
I always watch
couple
the
of years.
DVDs back to back on purpose. Like I'll quickly put them in and try to watch it as one movie.
All right. Well, thank you again, Quentin, for joining
An honor.
us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
The whole bloody affair has the all colored Japanese section.
Are we gonna get a Blu-ray of that?
You got to go to the New Beverly.
And on that note, we're done.
And we dropped the
Off
mic.
the mic. Yeah.
Naturally, we have to thank our amazing friends at Sony who were able to bring Quentin back around. He's obviously doing press for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is doing very, very well on the
But not
awards
that much
circuit.
press.
No. He isn't at all. And I love that in the course of our conversation, he mentions that podcasts are a good format for him because it allows him to sit back, be comfortable.
It's a double-edged sword for me because as a podcaster, I go, ooh, cool. But as someone who also still does TV junkets, I think, oh, that sucks.
Right. That's why we have both, though.
Yeah, very
The
true.
story of how this came together is really one for the ages, and I'm trying to decide where to even begin. I think we just have to flash forward to, we got to tell you guys that this interview happened in New York City on a Saturday, and it was confirmed Thursday evening, and we had to then get ourselves to New York City to make it happen, which is great. We were always prepared to jump the minute he was ready to go. We were thinking it was going to be Monday and that we'd have a little bit more time, and then when we found out it was going to be Saturday, we just literally dropped everything that we were doing and started moving mountains. However, you can only do so much. And when we all landed in New York with plenty of time, we planned to get there early in the morning. We were going to prep our questions. We all wrote up our own questions, but we love to have, we've talked about geek out dinners before. This was going to be a geek out breakfast, lunch kind of thing, where we would at least take the 40 to 50 questions we sort of scratched out and put them into an order that made sense. However, when we landed, we received a text message from Gabe that said, there's a delay. It's not good. And he was not exaggerating because Gabe had all of our recording equipment. He got it in St. Louis and was going to be bringing it to New York City with him and was due to land at like 11:30. There was no weather, no issues like that. It was a mechanical problem.
Gabe
with his
is really
plane.
good at making himself inexpendable.
Yes, exactly. And that led the three of us in New York to go into panic mode of we have to try to find equipment. But I also want to throw this to Kevin really fastly because Kevin is a wizard
when it comes to booking a flight, because he actually managed to get Gabe onto an earlier flight on a United Airlines plane that had one seat left, and Kevin sprung into action and secured that seat. It was something that I stood in Newark Airport watching Kevin work the phones, and I was dumbfounded at how good you are at this.
Well, thank you. And that was the craziest part is, as Sean mentioned, we all flew ourselves to New York. So Sean and I landed in Newark together. And we are at my gate, and I'm holding. Sean goes to get me a coffee, which I didn't drink. I threw away. I'll tell that story in a second.
I forgot that.
Yeah. So,
what do you mean? That was the first thing you said when I saw you in New York. Was Kevin threw away the coffee I bought for him.
Right, and I'll give an explanation.
There's a lot still to go.
Yeah. So I land. My phone's been off the 45 minutes flight from DC to Newark, and I land to a ton of texts that Gabe's not going to make it. We have no audio equipment. I mean, this is a huge problem because we're getting ready to do a 90-minute interview with Quentin Tarantino, and we have nothing to record on but our phones unless Gabe gets there. And so it's not even just Gabe having the audio equipment. I just want Gabe in the room with us when we record because that's the show. It doesn't feel right when Gabe's not with us. So my thought was Gabe doesn't have status on the airline, and so we have to figure out a way to get him on a flight. So I essentially call United with my status, and I get Gabe on the phone in a 3-way call, and Gabe is all ready to go. There's credit card information, all ready to go, and we book Gabe a flight to land at 1:30. Gabe's new flight, is going to land at 1:30 p.m. Keep in mind, our interview with Quentin Tarantino was scheduled for 3 p.m. We then later find out the interview is being moved to 2 p.m., which doesn't give Gabe any time at all to get from Newark to the hotel, set up his equipment, and get the interview rolling. So essentially we're in this position now where we are hoping that Gabe will land and get there in time, but we don't have audio equipment to do a 2:00 interview. We just don't. So Gabe starts calling around. Jake, we're all kind of panicking, but remember at the same time, as Sean mentioned, we all had to work on our questions. We had them emailed, we had lists, we were ready to go, but Jake and I and Sean, we all like to have an order of what we're doing, want to know what we're asking, but we did not have the luxury of doing that this time. We just kind of threw questions out in an email, and then we quickly, before the interview started, ordered them after we got our equipment. Here's the craziest thing. We essentially call around. Sean and I are in an Uber. I'm calling places in Jersey, Brooklyn, and this is the day of. Nobody has equipment. Nobody has recording equipment. And then I randomly call Guitar Center because Gabe mentioned Guitar Center. Guy picks up the phone. His name is Bruce. And I use Quentin Tarantino's name to say, we have an interview with Quentin Tarantino today, and we need help. We don't have any equipment. The guy proceeds to tell us.
Everyone in New York knew that we had an interview with Quentin Tarantino on Saturday.
Every audio shop knew that. And Gabe, I want you to chime in here too, because this guy picks up the phone and I tell him we're interviewing Quentin Tarantino, and he goes, "That's really weird because I actually produced a song on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack." And he goes on to tell this story about going to the Viper Room years ago, and his band was playing there, and Quentin was there, and I don't remember the exact details of it, but it was a crazy story. So anyways, we go to Guitar Center. And all three of us are in Guitar Center going through microphones, equipment, and eventually they give us this gear. And we have to learn it. And we have to learn how to operate it with 4 mic channels on GarageBand, stuff we have no idea what we're doing, which obviously gives us a deeper appreciation for what Gabe does on the show. But there is a visual that I'll never get out of my mind of Jake, Sean, and myself behind a Guitar Center cash register counter, testing microphones and people pretending to be Tarantino to test the audio. Remember one of Bruce's coworkers,
Aaron.
Yeah, he was Tarantino for us, and we're all like, and Gabe is in the air. We don't know what's going on. We just hope he'll land, and the idea would be that he would just sneak into the room and then possibly sit down with our equipment that we have set up.
Yeah, because at this point, Gabe has no idea that the interview is going to take place 30 minutes after.
Gabe, you're in the air. So I want to pause my story here and go to you because you've taken off and we're tracking your flight to land at 1:30 for a 2:00 interview. And what's going through your mind at this point?
While I'm flying, it's bliss. I'm like, oh, I'm on a flight. We're good to go.
You don't know the interview's been moved to 2 o'clock?
No.
You don't know any of this.
And it was hello, to give context. Hi. I'm filling in for Sean because Sean had a phone call he had to take. So now I'm here. But yeah, no, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was in the flight was enough stress. I thought we were all good. And when landing and realizing that it was supposed to be in 30 minutes was kind of the worst thing that could have happened after all that we went through that morning of just trying to get there. So yeah, no. As far as the flight was concerned, I was just ready to get there, and
right.
I was already bummed that I didn't get there early enough for us all to kind of, because we all usually work on the questions. We talk about order. We talk about
right.
We kind of sync up just in general about what we want to get from these interviews, and how we want to, and we can get very specific sometimes about how we want to do stuff. But that's the way we are. We're just very particular.
Yeah.
So it was for us. Not only was it a last minute book, but it was a last minute everything about it got condensed because of travel. Yeah, which is never fun.
So Jake, tell the audience what happened. So we leave Guitar Center. Jake.
See, my perception of Guitar Center was, because I know nothing about the technical side of thing, which only builds upon my respect for what Gabe does for this show. So Kevin, I don't know if you remember this, but I pieced out pretty early into the technical talk right. and found myself by the cowbells, and I was playing with all the different cowbells. So I would look over, and you and Bruce would be having this deep technical talk.
And Bruce was getting
Sean's
mad.
on the phone. And Bruce is getting mad because he's trying to tell Kevin what to do, and Kevin's not listening. And so I thought, oh, look, cowbells. So that's what I did for about an hour, was playing. And I kept coming over, and every I don't know if you remember, every 5 minutes I'd come over and show you a different weird musical instrument. I'd be like, look, maracas. And then I'd walk away, and then I'd come back, and I'd be like, look, a triangle. Right. And I kept coming back with different, and you did not find it nearly as funny as I did.
We were all freaking out.
I was feeling pretty good. I had my cowbell. We get back to the hotel, and we just start. At that point, we're settling in, and we're getting ready, and it's a technical thing. And the big question becomes whether or not Gabe's going to make it.
Right. And Jake's anxiety comes from not having the order of our questions.
Yeah, because listen, we all knew that we had great questions, but there's a difference between having 3 people with a bunch of good questions and having them flow.
Right.
And we at no point did we have a chance to sit down, because we also like to each take turns asking questions. We don't want to, we don't want to shortchange anyone. We don't want anyone to walk out of there thinking, well, I didn't get to ask anything.
Right.
So we try to make it so that at best we each take turns asking questions, but we're not jumping all over the place and asking a bunch of random stuff. That one kind of flows into the other. And that's easy to do once we can kind of sit down and take 20, 30 minutes and discuss what it is that we all had come up with. But it does take that process. Yeah. It does take that moment where I go, well, I want to ask this. Oh, you're asking that? That's cool. My question references something you're asking. Yeah. So why don't you ask that first, and then I'll follow it up with my question. Yeah. It's a simple conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I was getting nervous because the minutes were ticking by. And you want to seem professional.
We were supposed to be at a lunch going over this. We were supposed to be landed, no stress.
And the entire 36 hours leading up to this interview, what did I say? All I want is our freaking lunch to sit down and go over our questions. And the joke was, the only thing that was good, our big joke with Kevin doing the whole if it happens thing, we were saying, well, even if the interview doesn't happen, at least we'll have our lunch. Guess what didn't happen?
The lunch.
Our lunch.
And so to Jake's point, we did get to sit down very quickly. So I set up all the audio equipment. I got everything rolling while we went through the questions. And and a great example of what Jake's referring to, a great example of what Jake's talking about is the fatherhood question. Because if you look at the arc of that question, I ask it, and then Jake follows up with his, and then Sean follows up with his. If we didn't have the discussion of where those questions were going to go, that fatherhood moment would not have flowed the way it did. So Jake's very important point about preparation, that's how that stuff works. So then we get a text from Sony that says, oh, now it's going to be 2:30. So then we start having very detailed discussions about what we're going to do if Gabe can get here before Tarantino walks through that door. So then there's arguments of, do we let Gabe set his equipment up, take down our equipment? What if he walks in when Tarantino walks in? Then what do we do? And the consensus was, we'd rather have Gabe run this on his equipment with his own stuff and while there. But we didn't know if that was going to be the case. So we had this rig set up. Right. So then Gabe's texting us. He's landed. The clock is ticking down. It's like 2:20. And Gabe texts the group. And then I'll let Gabe take it from here. But he was 5 blocks away, sitting in horrible New York traffic.
Yeah, I mean, well, ever since I landed, I was trying to. That's kind of we all kind of work together on a lot of things, but that's usually my role. Is you guys can focus on what you're focusing on, and I can kind of solve our technical problems, whether it's that, whether it's travel, whether it's whatever. And so I'm sitting here trying to give you guys a list of, okay, if I get here at this time, this is what we'll do. If I get here at this time, this is what we'll do. If I'm not there at all and I die in a car crash, peace, have fun, enjoy it. But yeah, so I'm in an Uber going, okay, it says it's going to take this long, and it's a Saturday traffic in New York, and we're just trying to figure that out until I get about like 3 blocks away, and I can see on the map how far away it is, and I can see how much traffic is, and I'm like, all right, this is a movie moment, and I'm just going to embrace it, and I'm going to go with it, and I say, I'll just get out here, and I grab like, I don't know, maybe like 35 pounds worth of gear that I have, and I'm like sprinting through to get to this hotel. I'm out of breath. I'm in the lobby, and I'm like, I'm on the 3rd floor.
I know, like, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, I just say that, and she's like, oh, you're the audio person. I'm like, yeah. And then
you're
I
like,
finally
my name is Gabe.
Yeah, I didn't care that she could have called me whatever. But it worked out.
But Gabe walks in 2 minutes before Tarantino. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I'm still plugging in audio cables as he's like, hey guys, as you guys are like shaking hands and stuff, I'm like, check 1 2. I'm trying to make sure everything works so that when we hit start, it's not a clusterfuck, essentially.
And Tarantino appreciated it too, because like he was aware of what Gabe had just done, like the running thing. And like the beauty of what ended up happening in that moment was we bought Casamigos margaritas again, like we did in our first interview. So the time it took Tarantino to go over to the area and make himself a Casamigos margarita was the perfect timing for Gabe to get everything checked out. So basically all that Guitar Center equipment just got shoved aside after all that work we did, and Gabe gets his stuff in, and then we roll. And it was, and that was the crazy part. Yeah.
And I do want to give, we talk a lot about we're talking about our behind the scenes stuff, but a big part of the show is talking about behind the scenes of like, I don't want to say Hollywood, but behind how that system works and PR in general. And I don't want people to think that like it was do or die. Like if we weren't ready to go, they were just going to leave us. Right. But we're all we like to be prepared. We like to give them nothing to worry about on our end so that we can just go with the flow. And that's what we're operating from. Tarantino, when he got there, and his people and everybody, he would have
been fine waiting 5 minutes if he.
They were totally he even said like, oh, just take your time, like no worries. He was laughing at the story about us.
But we didn't want to waste his time.
Absolutely. So they were. I don't want people to think that they were like, sitting there tapping their watches waiting for it. They were super accommodating as far as needing a little bit extra time to just make sure everything was right. Because little did we know, not only were we going to be sitting there for 90 minutes, but he was going to want to keep going, and it ended up being over 2 hours. And it takes time to make sure everything's working so that something doesn't break over the course of 2 hours.
And to Jake's point and to Gabe's point, Gabe is there as a producer, but he's also there to limit our concerns about the equipment we're using, right? So,
tracking time and all that kind of stuff. You guys can just be in the moment.
Right. The mentality of Gabe sitting there and running his own equipment took my mind, because if he wasn't there, I would have been looking over at this computer that I operated through the Guitar Center equipment the whole time, and I wouldn't have been present in the conversation. And like Tarantino, I want to say thank you to him if he ever listens to this, because not only did he give us 90 minutes, but at the 90-minute mark, he said he wanted to keep going. And we just, and respectfully, each one of us said, you don't have to, we don't want to take advantage of your time, but you're more than welcome to stay. And whatever audio you're going to hear from this interview, there was so much more at the end of it that was so special to us that I think we'll eventually talk about at some point. But once the interview ended, we actually sat in that room, I don't want to exaggerate, maybe for another 20 minutes or so, talking to Tarantino about non-Tarantino things. Specifically his top 10 of the decade, which we won't reveal because we'll let him reveal that. But he gave us his first 5, and they're really cool.
It's kind of mind blowing. Yeah.
Wait, his top 5 of the 2000s of the decade are going to blow your mind. Like they're very, very. You would
Interesting.
You would
They're
never
very
imagine.
interesting.
Just the fact that he told us something and we can go like, we're gonna keep that. Like, we're not gonna tell you. That's his secret.
Yeah.
We'll let him tell you. The fact
We're
that
so
we
cool.
know something
Yeah.
about Quentin Tarantino that we'll let him tell you is pretty crazy to me.
But I do find it interesting though how easily he gave us that information. And it was interesting because we're just standing there and Gabe's packing up, and thank you to Shannon, who's his amazing producer who sat through the interview with us, who's actually responsible for the amazing Blu-ray you're seeing for Hollywood. And I think that it was just such a cool thing we're off record and we're just hanging out and just talking movies. And we got into the wildest discussions. Randomly, we were on William Shatner for like 10 minutes, and we were like going through these like loopholes of conversations. But we just wanted to share the behind the scenes experience of this because it meant a lot to us. We're not trying to sit here and say, we're the greatest, or, we're not trying to pat ourselves on the back. We're just giving you what it was like for us on that day. Because I feel like it will add an interesting context to what you just heard. And that's why we wanted to explain it.
Okay, I'm back. I'm joining the conversation, the Tarantino Love Fest, and I'm going to give you just my quick perspective on this because it's so bizarre that I need to get it on record so that it exists someplace.
Yeah.
But I texted this to the guys after the fact, and naturally, the text chain that we live in, essentially, was filled. Kevin made a joke where he essentially said, did I just pay for Wi-Fi on my flight home so I could just keep talking about this interview?
No, I actually did. I paid $8.99 for 25 minutes of Wi-Fi just so we can keep talking. After I scarfed down an amazing Wendy's burger. They're not an advertiser on the show, by the way.
The next day, they should be, though.
They should be.
The next day, as I tried to process this, I got hit by a feeling that is my honest reaction to this. Of just, I honestly think Quentin is friends with us. Like, I think that he's friends with us. And to the point where if we were to bump into him at the Critics' Choice Awards, of which
we have to collectively go over there to him together.
Well, but I also think that, like, okay, so we've had these conversations with certain filmmakers where the three of us have said, like, can we approach him? Do you think we can get a picture? How is it going to work out? I don't have that anymore with Quentin, right? I honestly feel like if we saw him someplace, we would be going up to him to catch up with him as a friend. Like, I legitimately feel, and I could be completely deluded. He might not think this at all.
Well, because remember, I said the next day, I said, like, and this is going to sound strange, but we're fortunate enough, all of us, to have multiple pictures with Quentin. And after the comment that he made in the podcast, I'm done asking Quentin Tarantino for pictures. Like if we were to go up to him in a couple of weeks, I think we would all go say hello. Hey, good to see you. Congratulations. Have a great night. And I think we would all just walk away.
And again, maybe I'm putting myself on a pedestal where I don't belong, but he was so unbelievably cool. And I'm sure you guys probably touched on this. The fact that he scheduled us last because he knew that we would be a hang. And then didn't want to have anything to do.
Actually, no, mention that. I don't think we talked about that.
He told us. Yeah, let Sean tell the story. This is cool.
He did some other press that day, obviously. He was in New York. He did a couple other podcasts, or another podcast. I know he was doing a few other interviews. But he told us that he specifically scheduled us last in his day, and that he had nothing else to do for the evening. And he said he did that specifically because he knew that he would want to spend more time with us. And I had said that to the guys at one point. Maybe I said it to Gabe. I forget who I said it to. I was like, I kind of get the impression that if it's going really well, he's going to want to stick around, because I do think the first time we interviewed him, when it ended, he didn't necessarily want to leave. I think he was enjoying himself. I think he really liked the questions that we asked. And I don't know if you guys mentioned this earlier, but at the 90-minute mark when he got up to take a bathroom break, and at that point, I had seen the time that we were at. And I essentially said to him, I was like, Quentin, you're kind of done. We're at 90 minutes.
And Quentin actually even said to us, oh, I saw your producer counting us down. I actually liked the behind the scenes. Remember he said that. He goes, I was watching Gabe, or your producer. I was watching him with his 10-minute sign. He was fully aware we were done. And to
Now,
Sean's
Gabe
point,
didn't rap Quentin. I will say that. Gabe did not give Quentin the rap sign, which was very kind of him.
Right.
But Quentin said, no, man, this is great. I'm having a total blast. And, do you want to go like 20 or 30 more minutes? Like, we can do like 20 or 30 more. And the funny part is, and I'm not sure if you guys mentioned this, at the hour mark, Gabe tapped my leg and pointed at the clock and was like, we've done an hour so far. And I looked at the sheet. I had 3 sheets of paper in front of me. Filled with questions of the order that we were potentially going to go in. We had done about 7 of them.
Yep.
And there was about 30 more to go.
Yeah.
And we were an hour into our 90-minute interview.
38 questions written in. By the way, I'll tease this now. I kept the paper of our order.
I did
so
too.
once,
Yeah.
and I actually kept Jake's too, because Jake left his on the table. So I grabbed Jake's and I grabbed mine so we can have them forever. And I think after the interview is released, we should tweet out the question list so people can
that'd be
see
fun.
what we got to
That'd
and
really
what we
cool.
didn't get to, because it was 38 questions. Every one of them was listed, the order we went in. And for people who may want to listen to the interview again or are super fans of our show, it could be a fun way to listen to it again if you want to go through our questions and see our sheet. And because at one point during the interview, before the interview started, Quentin actually said, "Do you mind asking me about something?" So I actually wrote, I wrote the Mad magazine on my sheet of paper, like in the middle of all these questions we had written, and it was just literally just right there as Mad, just to make sure we got to it. But it's crazy how little we got to with how much time we had, because it was a conversation. We're not patting ourselves on the back. We're just saying that it didn't feel like an interview for us. We were just talking.
And I want to say this. I think I speak for all 3 of us when I mentioned that we had a little trepidation with this one, in that the first interview went so well.
Yeah.
And I think Kevin said this once. He's like, I just don't want this one to not go as well as that. Like, I want my experience with him to be so good, right? And then this one, like, just floored it. And so, the takeaway, people always say, like, don't meet your heroes, right? Like, you're setting yourself up for potential disappointment.
Yep.
Both of these experiences with Quentin, as a result of this show and you guys listening to us and you guys encouraging us to go after filmmakers, have been 2 of the most amazing interview experiences I've ever had. The first one, and someone also pointed this out too, for the first one, we showed up in our suits and we looked like Reservoir Dogs. And it was an interview. We were very prepared. We had everything we wanted to get through with Quentin. It was structured. He gave great answers. This one was a hang, and we were all dressed casually. And it was I think Quentin approached it knowing that. He's like, this isn't an interview, it's a conversation. And I hope it came across that way as you guys listen to it. I feel that it was really a conversation, and he approached it that way too. And for that reason, I think that it has the vibe that it does.
Sean, did you like Volume 1 or Volume 2 better of our interviews?
Well, Volume 1 is much better.
It's one
Had more
interview.
energy. It's one interview. I like that we dabbled in that a little bit at the end, and he still was like, don't you cut it in half. Don't cut it in half. So I hope you guys enjoyed the behind the scenes story of what is gotta be. I mean, this has to be the best interview ReelBlend's ever done, is it? Right? What could top it?
It's the greatest moment for me in my career to be a part of this. And this is the last thing I will say, because this means the world to me. And I know Jake does this, and I'm sure Sean did this, and I'm sure Gabe did this. I probably stopped close to 10 or 11 times during the interview, and I stared at Quentin's face. And I said, I am sitting across from my hero. And it's hard to do that in an interview, especially when you have 4 minutes. But to sit there and actually look at him and actually have that moment where you go, he's right there talking to me about movies.
Yeah.
What is happening right now?
Right.
That's all that I had about 10 of those moments during the interview. And I'm sure Jake did. I'm sure Sean did. I did that on my wedding day, by the way. It's the only other time I ever did that, I think. I remember on my wedding.
Was that your wedding day?
No, but on my wedding day, I stopped and I said to Lauren, we're getting married right now. This is really cool.
Yeah,
that's how this
amazing.
moment is like near my wedding day. That's how big of a deal this was for me personally.
I love it. Let us know what you guys thought of the interview. Please go to social media, share your insights with Quentin and all the things that he shared with us. Send us emails, ReelBlend@cinemablend.com. We just want to hear your feedback. Naturally, we're not going to get 2+ hours with all of our cinematic icons. But, we're hoping that this is a springboard to get some other amazing filmmakers on the ReelBlend podcast because you guys have been so supportive and we are so appreciative of the fact that you guys listen to the show and allow us to do this. So thank you guys so much for listening to our extended interview with Quentin Tarantino. We were so excited to bring it to you guys. We hope you guys liked it. We'll be back next week with a traditional episode of the ReelBlend podcast as we build up to the live one that we're recording in Washington, D.C. for episode number 100. So until then...
Dunkirk.
Douglas. Dunkirk.